Be quiet when the adults are talking. My son yelled that at me in the middle of the meeting about selling my house. Calmly, I walked out into the backyard and dialed a number. 5 minutes later, his phone rang, and my daughter-in-law's desperate scream was heard. "Mom, we're family. You can't do this to us." But I could. And I did. Now let me tell you how I got to that moment. How I went from being Eleanor, the mother who sacrificed everything, to being the old woman who needed to shut up while they decided my fate. This story begins with a betrayal planned for months, executed in my own living room, in front of my own children. That morning, I knew something bad was going to happen. I felt it in the air, in the way Julian had called the night before. "Mom, we need to talk. Tomorrow at 10. It's important. We'll all be there." His voice sounded strange, distant, like he was reading from a script. "We'll all be there." Those words kept me up all night. Who was everyone? Why did they all need to be present to talk to me? I am their mother, not a board meeting. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there they were, Julian and Chloe, holding hands as always, she in a sleek, pearl gray sheath dress and heels that clicked against the floor. Evan arrived 5 minutes later, avoiding my eyes, murmuring a good morning that sounded more like an advance apology. I let them in. I made a pot of coffee. Nobody touched it. They sat in formation, like a tribunal. Julian and Chloe on the main sofa, so close they looked like one person. Evan in the side armchair, his gaze fixed on the hardwood floor. And me, standing in front of them, because something inside told me not to sit, not to lower myself to their level, to maintain my dignity, even if I didn't yet know what I was being accused of. Chloe started talking in that soft voice she had perfected over 3 years. "Mom, we know this is difficult for you, but we need to make some important decisions. You're not young anymore. This house is too big. The stairs, the upkeep, it's all complicated for someone your age. Someone my age." As if 61 years made me an invalid incapable of opening a door, Julian continued where she left off. "Mom, we've been thinking. The best thing would be to sell the house. There are more suitable options for you. Something smaller, simpler. And with the money from the sale, we could make a family investment that would benefit everyone." Family investment. What nice words for "we want your money." Evan was still silent, staring at those damn floors as if they were going to open up and swallow him. I tried to speak. I tried to say that this house was my home, that I had lived here for 32 years, that Arthur and I had bought it with our sweat, that every corner held our history. But I barely opened my mouth, barely said, "But son," when Julian raised his hand as if I were a dog that needed to be silenced. And then he said it, with that cold voice, with that contempt in his eyes. "Be quiet when the adults are talking." The world stopped. The air grew thick. I looked at my son, this man who had been my baby, my boy, my pride, and I didn't recognize him. Chloe was smiling. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but it was there, the smile of someone who just won. Evan looked up for the first time, met my gaze for 2 seconds, and looked down again. Coward. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I stood up straight, with the dignity they lacked, and walked into the backyard. Behind me, I heard Chloe's voice, calm, victorious. "Let her go. She'll understand. She's old. It's hard for her to process change. She's old, as if age were a disease. As if my years of sacrifice, of work, of love, meant nothing." I sat on the wrought iron bench that Arthur had painted white 2 weeks before his death. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from contained fury, of absolute clarity. I took out my phone. I looked for the number I had saved 4 months ago, a number Margaret had given me with a warning. "Only use this if you really need to, Eleanor. Once you do, there's no turning back," I dialed. Margaret answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm but alert. "Eleanor, it happened, didn't it?" "Yes, Margaret, it happened. Do it." There was a brief silence, then her voice, firm and professional. "Give me 5 minutes." I hung up. I sat there, looking at the hydrangeas climbing the backyard wall. I breathed in the fresh morning air. And I waited. Exactly 5 minutes later, Chloe's phone began to ring inside the house. I heard Chloe's phone vibrate first, then ring insistently. Once, twice, 3 times. She didn't answer. She was probably enjoying her victory, savoring the moment they had put me in my place, already planning how they would spend my money. But the phone kept ringing. Insistent. Annoying. Finally, I heard her voice. Hello? Pause. Yes, this is she. Another pause. Longer. What? What do you mean we can't? Her voice rose. That's impossible. I sat motionless on that bench, my hands in my lap, listening as panic began to seep into my daughter-in-law's voice. Julian asked something I couldn't hear. Chloe's answer was crystal clear. It's your mother's lawyer. She says the house can't be sold. Silence in the house. A silence so thick I could almost touch it. Then I heard quick footsteps. The backyard door flew open. Chloe came out, phone in hand, her face distorted, that mask of sweetness completely shattered. Julian was behind her, pale, confused. Evan peeked through the door but didn't come out. Mom, we're family. You can't do this to us. Chloe's voice trembled between pleading and rage. We just want what's best for you. How can you be so selfish? Think about your grandchildren. Think about Julian's future. I looked up slowly. I looked her straight in the eyes, those eyes that for 3 years had feigned affection, respect, admiration. Now I only saw what had always been there: greed, ambition, contempt. I already have thought about Julian's future, I said in a calm voice. That's why I did what I did. My son stepped forward. Mom, what did you do? What did you tell Margaret? His voice sounded like a scared child's, not the man who had told me to shut up 5 minutes earlier. I did what I should have done months ago, Julian. I protected what is mine. Chloe gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. But you said the house was for the family, that one day it would be for your children. You promised. I never promised anything, Chloe. You assumed. You planned. You decided. All without consulting me. All while treating me as if I were already dead. Chloe's phone rang again. She answered with a trembling voice. Yes. A long pause. No, we didn't know. Another pause. Since when? Her face turned even paler. 4 months. She hung up. She looked at me with a hatred she no longer even tried to hide. You put the house in a trust 4 months ago. It can't be sold without your authorization, and if you die, it passes directly to a charitable foundation. You cut us out completely. Julian looked at me as if he didn't know me. Mom, how could you? We're your family. Exactly, Julian. You are my family. But today you treated me like trash. Today your wife decided my future without asking me. Today you, my own son, told me to shut up as if I were nobody. But we just wanted to help. Chloe intervened, switching tactics, softening her voice, trying to retrieve the sweet mask that had fallen. You're all alone, Mom. You need support. You need family close by. If I needed support, Chloe, I wouldn't have spent the last 6 months making you guys Sunday dinner while you checked your phone without saying a word to me. I wouldn't be paying for my grandkids' private school tuition while you buy $2,000 handbags. I wouldn't have become the maid for my own family. That's not true, Julian shouted. We love you. We've always loved you. I stood up. I looked at them both. Julian, when your father died, you came to visit me twice in 3 months. Twice. I was destroyed, alone, lost, and you were too busy. But when you needed money for the down payment on his car, you showed up. $20,000 I lent you. I'm still waiting to be paid back. Julian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. When Chloe was pregnant with the second baby, you moved into my house for 6 months. 6 months where I cooked, cleaned, took care of your older son while you went out on weekends to rest. I was 58 years old and exhausted, but I never said anything because you were my family. Chloe's voice was sharp. You offered to help. I offered because I'm your mother, Chloe, because that's how I was raised. But you turned my generosity into an obligation, my love into servitude. Evan finally came out into the backyard. Mom, I didn't know they were going to treat you like this today. I swear. But you let them, Evan. You sat there and let your brother humiliate me. You stared at the floor like a coward while they decided to sell my home. You are just as guilty as they are. My oldest son lowered his head. I was right. He knew it. Chloe regained her composure. Fine. You win. But don't count on us ever again. Don't expect to see your grandchildren. Don't expect us to take care of you when you're sick. You chose money over family. I laughed. It was a bitter, tired laugh. No, Chloe, I chose my dignity over your greed. You chose money when you planned this meeting. When you decided a 61-year-old woman didn't deserve a voice or a vote. When you assumed I was so stupid I wouldn't notice. Julian tried to get closer. Mom, we can fix this. Let's talk calmly. You already talked, Julian. You talked amongst yourselves for months. You planned. You coordinated. Today you just came to inform me of a decision already made. But it turns out I know how to plan, too. When did you do it? Evan asked. When did you go to Margaret? 4 months ago. The day I came to visit and overheard Chloe talking on the phone with her mother. She said they'd have a lot of money soon, that the old woman wouldn't last much longer anyway, that the house was in the best area and worth a fortune. That day, I left your house and called Margaret. Chloe turned white. I never said that. Liar. You said it in those exact words. I was in the hallway. I heard every word. And that day, I understood everything. I understood why you suddenly visited more, why you asked about the house, why Julian insisted on driving me to the bank. Julian shook his head, as if denying the truth could change it. No, Mom, that's not true. Chloe never said that. You're confused. At your age, it's normal to. To what, Julian? To imagine things? To invent conversations? To be senile? Is that what you were going to say? He fell silent. The answer was in his silence. I'm 61, not 90. My mind is perfectly clear. So clear I could see right through you, even when you weren't trying hard to hide it. So clear I hired the best lawyer in the city and protected my assets before you could take them from me. Chloe took a step toward me. Her face no longer showed sweetness or panic, just pure rage. You are a selfish, bitter old woman who can't stand to see her family happy. Everything we did was out of love. Love, I repeated. Tell me, Chloe, what part of telling your husband to tell me to shut up is love? What part of planning to sell my house without my consent is love? What part of counting my money before I'm dead is love? I never counted your money. Lies. 2 months ago you went through the papers on my desk when I went to the bathroom. You thought I didn't notice, but you left the drawer slightly open. I always close it completely. Those papers were in alphabetical order, and you put them back out of order. Chloe's face contorted. She had no answer for that. Evan approached me. Mom, I understand you're angry. You're right about everything. But to make that trust, to leave everything to a foundation, that's too much. We're your sons. We deserve something. Deserve. That's an interesting word, Evan. Tell me what you've done to deserve anything. Because I remember paying your entire college tuition, $40,000 in 4 years. I remember lending you $15,000 for the down payment on your house, which you also never paid back. I remember watching your kids every time you needed a favor. What do you remember? Evan looked down again. I've always thanked you, Mom. Thanking with words is easy, son. Defending your mother when she's being humiliated, that takes courage. And today, you sat there like a statue. Julian exploded. That's enough. This is ridiculous. You're our mother. You can't punish us like this over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. They called months of manipulation a misunderstanding. A meeting planned to strip me of my home. Being told to shut up in my own house. It's not a punishment, Julian. It's a consequence. You decided to treat me like a burden. I decided to protect myself. You planned my future without including me. I planned mine without including you. It's fair, don't you think? Chloe let out a dry, bitter laugh. Fair? What do you know about fair? We work, we strive, we raise your grandchildren. And you're going to leave all your money to strangers. They're not strangers, Chloe. It's a foundation that helps vulnerable seniors. Women like me, who were manipulated by their families. Women who need legal support to protect themselves from greedy children and ambitious daughters-in-law. The insult landed like a slap. Chloe clenched her fists. You're calling me ambitious. I'm not calling you anything, Chloe. I simply described the women the foundation helps. If the shoe fits, wear it. Julian stepped between us. This is over. Let's go, Chloe. I'm not staying here to listen to her insult my wife. Your wife has been insulting me for 3 years, Julian. She just did it with smiles and sweet words. Today, I just decided to speak the truth. Chloe grabbed her purse. She looked at me with contempt. You are going to die alone, ma'am. Completely alone. And when you're in a hospital bed, begging for help, don't count on us. Her words should have hurt me. They should have broken me. But the only thing I felt was relief. I'd rather die alone than live surrounded by vultures waiting for me to die. Julian pointed his finger at me. This isn't over, Mom. We're going to contest that trust. We're going to prove you weren't in your right mind when you signed it. Try it, son. Margaret made sure everything was legal. I signed in front of 3 witnesses, 2 of them doctors who certified my full mental capacity. I have psychological evaluations, cognitive studies, all documented. I spent $5,000 making sure it was ironclad. Evan shook his head. $5,000 you could have used on your family. $5,000 I invested in my peace of mind. The best investment of my life. Chloe walked to the door. Julian followed her, as always, like an obedient dog. Evan stayed a moment longer, looking at me with something resembling shame. Mom, no, Evan. Don't say anything. You had your chance to speak, and you chose silence. Now live with that decision. He nodded slowly and walked out after his siblings. I heard them murmuring in the living room, then the front door slammed shut. The silence that followed was absolute. I sat down on the bench again. My hands were no longer shaking. My breathing was calm. I looked at the garden that Arthur and I had planted together 20 years ago. The rose bushes he pruned every spring. The jasmine climbing the kitchen window. The pots of geraniums I watered every morning. This was my home, my sanctuary. The place where I had been happy, where I had grieved, where I had lived. And no one was going to take it from me. The phone rang. It was Margaret. Everything okay, Eleanor? Everything is fine, Margaret. Thank you. I told you it would work. When you told me what you overheard 4 months ago, I knew we needed to act fast. You did well to insist. I still had hope I was wrong. You're never wrong when it comes to intuition, Eleanor. 40 years of knowing you taught me that. I hung up and closed my eyes. The morning sun warmed my face. A gentle breeze rustled the hydrangea leaves. A bird was singing in the corner tree. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. I had lost my family, but I had gained something more valuable. My dignity, my autonomy, my right to decide my own life. I thought of Arthur, of what he would have said if he had seen all this. He probably would have confronted Julian long before I did. Arthur never tolerated disrespect, especially towards me. He was a good man, a man who loved me until his last breath. I miss you, Arthur, I whispered to the wind. But today, I did what you would have wanted. I defended myself. I went inside the house. The living room still smelled of Chloe's perfume, that cloying, sweet scent that always gave me a headache. I opened the windows. I let the fresh air in. In half an hour, there would be no trace of them. I made coffee, this time for me. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one Arthur gave me for our 20th anniversary. The leather was worn, but it was comfortable. It was mine. The phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Julian called every hour, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to threats. Mom, please, pick up. We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Then, 2 hours later, you're making a mistake. You're going to regret this. And later, into the night, I warned you, Mom. We're going to contest everything. You'll see you're not as smart as you think. I deleted every message without finishing it. Chloe tried to contact me too. She sent long text messages. Mom, I know we're going through a tough time, but family is the most important thing. The kids are asking for you. They're sad. It's not fair for them to pay for our adult problems. Then, when I didn't respond, you were being cruel. Selfish. I never thought you were so petty. And finally, fine, you win. But remember that elderly people who end up alone usually end up badly. Very badly. I blocked her number. Evan was the only one who didn't insist. He sent me a single text. Mom, I'm sorry for how things happened. I need time to process everything. I hope you're okay. I didn't reply, but I didn't block him either. During those 3 days, I dedicated myself to doing something I hadn't done in years. Living for myself. I got up without rushing, made my favorite breakfast, coffee with toast and strawberry jam. I sat on the balcony watching the city wake up. I read the book I had bought 6 months ago and never had time to open because I was always cooking for someone, cleaning for someone, available for someone. On the 4th day, Margaret came to visit. She had a folder under her arm, and that expression she only gets when she has news. They tried to contest the trust, she said bluntly, sitting in the living room. Julian hired a lawyer, a cheap one, by the way. They filed a motion alleging you were coerced and not of sound mind when you signed. I took a deep breath. And what happened? The judge threw it out in 48 hours. We have 3 medical evaluations, notarized testimonies, videos of the signing. Everything indicates you were perfectly lucid and made the decision free of pressure. His lawyer didn't even present real evidence, just vague accusations. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. So it's closed. Completely. What's more, the judge warned Julian that any new attempt to contest, without basis, could be considered legal harassment. Your son left that courtroom furious, from what I'm told. Margaret took some papers from the folder. But there's something else I need you to see. This arrived at my office yesterday. I read the document. It was a lawsuit. Julian and Chloe were suing me for the return of all gifts and loans they had received over the last 3 years. They were claiming $35,000. According to them, everything had been given under the understanding that they would inherit the house, and by changing that, they considered it fraud. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A dry, incredulous laugh. They're suing me for the money I gave them? Technically, they're arguing they were investments with an expectation of return. It's absurd, but they're desperate. Can they win? Margaret shook her head. Eleanor, every dollar you gave them is documented as a gift or a loan with no due date. I have the bank receipts, the text messages where they themselves thank you for your generosity. They don't have a case. But the process will be annoying and public. Let it be. I'm not afraid of a scandal anymore. I don't care about keeping up appearances anymore. Margaret smiled. That's my Eleanor. The one I met 40 years ago. The woman who didn't take crap from anyone. I got lost for a while, Margaret. I became what they needed me to be. The complacent mother. The helpful grandmother. The old woman who doesn't protest. But that day, when Julian told me to shut up, something inside me broke. And what came out was the real me. It was time, she said, putting the papers away. By the way, the foundation wants to meet you. I told them your story, obviously without personal details, and they're impressed. They want you to consider being on the advisory board. Me? On a board? You're exactly the type of person they need. Someone who lived the experience. Someone who fought back. Your story can help other women. I'll think about it. After Margaret left, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. 4 days ago, my family was in my living room trying to rob me. Now they were suing me because they failed. The irony was almost poetic. I couldn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety, but from memories. I remembered the day I met Arthur. I was 19 years old. He was 23. He worked at a hardware store, and I came in looking for screws to fix a chair. He helped me for an hour to find exactly what I needed. 3 days later, he showed up at my mother's house to ask if the chair was fixed properly. We got married 8 months later. It was 38 years of marriage. Good years. Not perfect, but good. Arthur was patient, hardworking, loyal. We raised our children with solid values. Or so we thought. We taught them to respect, to be honest, to value family. Where did we fail? Maybe we didn't fail, I thought. Maybe Julian made his own decisions. Maybe he chose a woman who reinforced his worst characteristics instead of his best. Maybe Evan was always a coward, and I just didn't want to see it. Maybe we, as parents, did the best we could, and it still wasn't enough. On the 5th day, I received an unexpected visit. It was 3 in the afternoon. I was in the backyard pruning the rose bushes when the doorbell rang. I thought about not opening it. It could be Julian. It could be Chloe. It could be another fight. But something made me open it. And there was Evan, alone, without his wife, Paige, without his kids, just him, hands in his pockets and his eyes red. "Can I come in, Mom?" I hesitated for a moment. Then I opened the door completely. We went into the living room. I offered him coffee. He accepted. We sat in silence for 5 full minutes, him staring at his cup, me waiting. Finally, he spoke. "I'm a coward." I didn't respond. I wanted to hear what else he had to say. "I should have defended you that day. I should have stood up and told Julian to shut up. I should have told Chloe they had no right to decide your life. But I just sat there, staring at the floor like an idiot. Why, Evan? Why didn't you say anything?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "Because I'm afraid of Julian. I always have been. Since we were kids, he was the strong one, the confident one, the one who made decisions. I was the older brother, but I felt like the younger one. And when he married Chloe, she made him worse, more aggressive, more controlling. That's no excuse to betray me. I know. That's why I'm here. Not to ask for forgiveness, because I don't deserve it. I came to tell you that you were right about everything. About the trust. About protecting yourself. About pushing us away. Us. Interesting that you include yourself. I have to include myself, Mom. I've also abused your generosity. The $15,000 you lent me for the house, I never thought about paying you back. I assumed you were my mother, and it was your duty to help me. I was wrong." He took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. He put it on the table. "This is what I owe you. $15,000. I can't pay you back for the time you wasted watching my kids while I worked. I can't pay you back for the meals you cooked. But I can do this." I looked at the envelope without touching it. "I don't need your money, Evan. It's not about need, Mom. It's about justice. You were right. We turned your generosity into an obligation. Today I came to settle my debt, not the emotional one. I can never settle that. But at least the financial one. Why now, Evan? Why not before? Why not that day when your brother humiliated me? Because I'm a coward. I already told you, but also because Paige opened my eyes. When I told her what happened, she looked at me with such disappointment. She told me I was acting like a weak man, that our children were learning from my example, and that if I didn't change, I'd end up alone. Your wife is wise." Evan nodded. "She told me to come, to talk to you, to try to repair even a piece of what I broke. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope you know I'm sorry." I looked at my oldest son, this 38-year-old man who looked older than he was. The wrinkles around his eyes had appeared suddenly. Or maybe they were always there, and I just didn't want to see them. Evan had been a shy, insecure child who hid behind me when guests came over. Arthur used to worry about it. "He needs to toughen up, Eleanor. The world is hard on weak people." But I defended him. "He's sensitive, Arthur. That's not weakness." Over time, I learned my husband was right. Sensitivity without a backbone becomes cowardice. "Take your money, Evan," I said finally, pushing the envelope toward him. "I don't want it." "Mom, please. No. Listen to me. If I accept that money, I'm validating the transaction. I'm saying our relationship is commercial, that everything can be fixed with cash. And it's not like that." Evan's shoulders slumped. "Then what do you want from me? I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me if you really came out of remorse or if Julian sent you to soften me up." He looked me straight in the eyes for the first time since he arrived. "Julian doesn't know I'm here. In fact, when he finds out, he'll probably stop talking to me. He's furious with you, but even more furious with the world. Chloe has him wound up. They're drowning in debt." "Debt?" Evan nodded. "They owe $80,000 in credit card debt. The car they bought 2 years ago is about to be repossessed. The house they live in is a rental, and they're 3 months behind on payments. That's why they needed your house. It wasn't about you. It was because they're desperate, and they thought they could solve their crisis with my assets. Exactly. Chloe convinced Julian it was the right thing to do, that you didn't need that much space, that it was selfish for you to live in a $350,000 house while they were struggling. She has a special talent for making her ideas sound reasonable. I know her well, I said bitterly. She had me fooled for 3 years. I thought she liked me, respected me. Nobody likes her, Mom. I'm not even sure Julian loves her. I think he's afraid of her. Afraid of being alone. Afraid to admit he married the wrong woman. That's not my problem, Evan. I know. And I'm not asking you to make it your problem. I just came to tell you the truth. To apologize. And to give you this. He took another paper from his pocket. It was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was uneven, shaky. I immediately recognized Evan's writing. He always had terrible handwriting. Read it when I'm gone, he said. I don't want to be here. I'm too ashamed. He stood up. He left the envelope with the money on the table. Mom, I know you're not accepting this, but I'm going to leave it here anyway. Use it, give it away, burn it. Do whatever you want, but I needed to bring it. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he stopped. One more thing. Julian is going to keep trying. He's not going to stop. He's convinced the house should be his. Chloe has him programmed like a robot. Be careful. I am being careful, Evan. That's why I did what I did. He nodded and left. I heard his footsteps in the hall, the door closing softly. I stayed in the living room with the envelope and the letter. I picked up the letter first. I opened it with trembling hands. Mom, I don't know how to start this. I've been writing and erasing for 3 days. Paige says I just need to be honest, so here it goes. I'm a failure as a son. I always have been. Dad knew it. You know it. I know it. I spent my life hiding behind Julian, letting him make the tough decisions, letting him face the problems. And when I had to defend you, I hid again. I failed you at the most important moment. I have no excuse. I only have shame. These last 3 days, I've thought a lot. About how we treated you, about how we abused you, about how we took your love for granted as if it were infinite and unconditional. And maybe it was. But we had no right to exploit it. Paige asked me something that destroyed me. She said, if your sons treated you the way you treat your mother, how would you feel? I couldn't answer, because the truth broke me. I've been teaching my sons, by my example, that it's okay to use people, that it's okay to stay quiet in the face of injustice, that it's okay to be a coward. I don't want them to be like me. That's why I'm changing. Not for you, though I owe you everything, but for them, for my kids. Because they deserve a better father. This money doesn't fix anything, I know that, but it's the only tangible thing I can do. The rest, the real repair, is going to take years, if I ever even get there. I'm not asking for forgiveness. That would be too easy. I'm asking for time. Time to show you I can be better. Time to rebuild what I broke. And if you decide you don't want to give me that time, I'll understand. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it without failing you. Evan. I read the letter 3 times, each time with more clarity. Evan was right about one thing. He was a coward. But at least he was a self-aware coward. That was more than I could say for Julian. I put the letter in my desk drawer, the envelope with the money I left on the table. I didn't know what to do with it yet. The following days were strangely quiet, as if the universe was giving me a break after the storm. I dedicated myself to rearranging the house. I took down old photos of Julian and Chloe. I didn't throw them away. I stored them in a box in the closet. Maybe one day I could look at them without feeling rage. But that day wasn't today. I rearranged the living room, moved furniture, changed the curtains to mint green ones I had seen in a store months ago, but never bought because Chloe had said they were hideous. Now they hung in my window, and I loved them. Margaret called to confirm my participation in the first advisory board meeting for the foundation. I accepted. Why not? I had time. I had experience. I had a story to tell. The meeting was in a small but cozy office downtown. There were 6 other women, all over 50, all with stories similar to mine. Sons who manipulated them, families that exploited them, assets they almost lost. One of them, Iris, was 72 years old. Her son had put her in a nursing home without her consent to sell her house. She managed to get out with legal help, but not before he emptied her bank accounts. She lost $200,000. "My son is in prison now," she said calmly, "not because I reported him, but because he did the same thing to 3 other elderly women. Eventually, criminals expose themselves." Another woman, Esmeralda, 65 years old, told how her daughter-in-law convinced her to put the house in her son's name. 3 months later, they kicked her out. She had to live with a cousin for 2 years until a judge reversed the transfer for fraud. "My mistake was trusting," she said. "But I don't make that mistake anymore. I listened to their stories for 3 hours, each one more heartbreaking than the last. And I understood something fundamental. I was not alone. This wasn't personal against me. It was a pattern. A silent epidemic of family abuse that no one wanted to name because family is sacred. Because mothers must sacrifice. Because questioning your children is taboo." At the end of the meeting, the foundation coordinator, Yasmin, asked me to share my story. I spoke for 20 minutes. I told them about Chloe, about Julian, about the meeting, about the trust, about how I took my power back. When I finished, Iris took my hand. "You did the right thing," she said. "It doesn't matter how much it hurts. It doesn't matter how much they criticize you. Protecting yourself is never selfishness. It's survival." I left that meeting feeling stronger than ever. I had found my tribe. Women who understood, who didn't judge me, who had fought their own battles and won. That night, sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea, I looked at the illuminated city. The lights twinkled like earthbound stars. The traffic noise was a distant hum. The air smelled of approaching rain. I thought of Arthur. How proud he would be of me. I thought of Evan and his letter, his late attempt at redemption. I thought of Julian, probably in his rented house, furious, planning his next move. And I realized something. I didn't care what they did anymore. I no longer lived for their approval. I no longer needed their love if the price was my dignity. 2 weeks passed with no news from Julian. 2 weeks of silence that were more eloquent than any words. I knew he was out there, stewing in his anger, planning something. Margaret had warned me. Men like your son don't give up, especially when they feel something they considered theirs was taken. But I hadn't taken anything. I had simply protected what was mine. In that time, my life took on a new rhythm. I joined a book club at the local library. 8 women who met every Thursday afternoon to discuss novels. The first time I went, I felt out of place. They already knew each other, had their inside jokes, their shared references, but they welcomed me with genuine warmth. One of them, a woman named Dolores, just like my lawyer but no relation, asked me why I had decided to join. "I needed to remember who I was before I became just a mother and grandmother," I told her. She smiled. "We're all here for the same reason." I also started taking yoga classes twice a week. The instructor, a young man named Salvador, had the patience of a saint. The first class, I almost gave up. I couldn't touch my toes, my back cracked with every movement, and the poses that were simple for others were medieval torture for me. But Salvador approached me and said something that stuck with me. Yoga isn't about perfection. It's about the attempt, about showing up, about respecting where your body is today, not where it was 20 years ago. I kept showing up. Each class got a little easier. My body began to remember that it could bend, stretch, breathe. One afternoon, as I was returning from yoga, I found Evan waiting at the door of my building. He was holding 2 coffees and a bag of pastries. He didn't say anything. He just held up the coffees as a peace offering. We went up in silence. In the apartment, we sat on the balcony. The sun was beginning to set, staining the sky in intense orange and pink. "Paige wants to invite you to dinner," he said at last. "Next Saturday. Just the 4 of us. You, me, her, and the kids." "Do the kids know what happened?" Evan shook his head. "They just know the family is going through a tough time. They're little. They don't need to know the details. But they miss you. They ask about you." I felt a pang in my chest. My grandchildren. They had been innocent victims in all of this. They weren't to blame for their parents' decisions. "I'll think about it," I said. "Okay, no rush. The invitation is permanent." We drank coffee in silence for a while. Then Evan spoke again. "Julian is worse. Chloe left him." I looked at him, surprised. "When?" "A week ago. She took the kids and went to live with her mother. She says she can't be with such a weak man. That if he couldn't get the money from his own mother, how is he going to support a family?" The irony was almost comical. Chloe had manipulated Julian into robbing me, and when he failed, she abandoned him for failing. "How is he?" "Destroyed. He's not going to work. He's not answering calls. I went to see him 3 days ago. The apartment is a disaster." "He is a disaster. He blames me." "Abe blames you. He blames the whole world except Chloe. He still doesn't see who she really is." Evan nodded. "He's blind. Or maybe he doesn't want to see. It's easier to blame you than to accept he married a woman who only wanted him for money. Money he never even had, by the way." "Did you try to talk to him?" "I tried. He yelled at me. He told me I was a traitor, that I had chosen your side, that I was never really his brother. Maybe he's right about that last part. He's not, Evan. Being a brother doesn't mean being an accomplice. It means telling the truth even when it hurts. I should have told him years ago. When he met Chloe, I saw the signs. I saw how she manipulated him, how she isolated him from his friends, how every decision went through her filter. But I said nothing because I didn't want problems. Silence is also a choice. The worst choice," Evan admitted. "Because now my brother is alone, broke, and I don't know how to help him." "You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. Julian needs to hit bottom. He needs to wake up, and only he can do that." Evan finished his coffee. Before leaving, he hugged me. It was a long, tight hug, full of regret and hope. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. I still don't know if I've forgiven you, Evan, but I'm trying. That's more than I deserve." After he left, I kept thinking about Julian, my younger son, the boy who had been so cheerful, so affectionate, the one who would climb into my bed on Sunday mornings asking me to make him pancakes, the one who cried on my shoulder when his first crush rejected him, the one who hugged me at Arthur's funeral and promised he would always be there for me. Where had that boy gone? When did he become this bitter man who yelled at me and despised me? Was it my fault? Did I overprotect him? Did I give him everything without teaching him the value of hard work? Or was it Chloe who corrupted him? Or was it just life showing who he really was? I had no answers, only questions that kept me up at night. The following Saturday, I accepted Evan's invitation. I arrived at his house at 7 in the evening. It was a modest but cozy home. Paige greeted me with a genuine hug. The children, 6 and 9 years old, ran to me shouting, "Grandma." They wrapped their little arms around me, and I felt something inside me melt. I had missed them, more than I wanted to admit. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, salad, mashed potatoes, nothing elaborate, but made with love. The kids talked nonstop, telling me about school, about their friends, about the dog they wanted but Evan wouldn't let them have because the landlord didn't allow pets. After dinner, while Paige put the kids to bed, Evan and I washed the dishes. We worked in silence, in that synchronicity that only comes from years of knowing each other. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Thanks for insisting. I want this to be regular. For you to come every week if you want. To be part of my kids' lives. For you not to pay for my mistakes. Your kids were never the problem, Evan. You were. I know. And I'm working on being better. Paige has me in therapy, twice a week. The therapist says I have issues with boundaries and self-esteem. That's why I always let Julian dominate me. Therapy is good. I wish I had gone after your father died. It's never too late, Mom. My therapist works with seniors, too. I'll think about it. When I left that night, Evan walked me to the taxi. Before I got in, he gave me another paper. It's from Julian. He gave it to me to give to you. I don't know what it says. If you don't want to read it, don't. I took the paper and put it in my purse. In the taxi, as the city passed by the window, I took out the letter. Julian's handwriting was firm, angular, Nothing like Evan's shaky script. "Mom, I don't know how to address you. I don't know if I deserve to call you that anymore." Chloe left. She took my kids. She says I'm a failure. Maybe she's right. I lost my job 2 weeks ago. I couldn't concentrate. I was late. I made mistakes. They fired me. The apartment we lived in, they're taking it back next month. I haven't paid rent in 4 months. I owe money to everyone. Creditors call day and night. I'm ruined. And the worst part is, I know it's my fault. Not yours, mine. Evan told me you warned me about Chloe at the beginning, that you saw something in her I refused to see. You were right. You were always right. She never loved me. She used me. And I let her use me because it was easier than being alone. I'm not writing to ask for money. I know you wouldn't give it to me, and I shouldn't ask. I'm writing because I need you to know I'm sorry. I'm sorry for yelling at you. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I'm sorry for trying to rob you. Because that's what it was. A robbery, not a family investment, not a logical decision. A robbery planned by my wife and executed by me. I'm a thief who tried to steal from his own mother. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. I just hope that one day you can remember me as the boy I was, not the man I became, Julian. I read Julian's letter 3 times before I got to my apartment. Every word was loaded with pain, regret, and a clarity I had never seen in him. But there was also something that bothered me. A part of me, the part that had been hurt, humiliated, betrayed, wondered if this was real or just another manipulation. If Julian had learned so well from Chloe that he now used vulnerability as a weapon, I couldn't know for sure, and that uncertainty tormented me. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the balcony until the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft colors, lavender and peach. I thought about my 2 sons. Evan, the coward who was trying to change. Julian, the manipulator who was perhaps waking up. And I thought about me, about Eleanor. The woman I had been, the one I was now, the one I wanted to be. I didn't have to make an immediate decision. I had learned that in recent weeks. Not all crises required instant answers. Sometimes the wisest thing was to wait, to observe, to let time reveal true intentions. I put Julian's letter next to Evan's. 2 documents of repentance, 2 different paths to redemption, one already being walked, the other just beginning. The days went on. Yoga classes continued. The book club became something I looked forward to. The foundation meetings gave me purpose. And the weekly dinners with Evan and his family gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. Genuine connection. A month after receiving Julian's letter, Margaret called with news. "Your son dropped the lawsuit. His lawyer sent an official notice. Says it was a mistake, that he was going through a difficult time, and that he will not proceed with any legal action against you." I sat on the sofa, processing the information. That's good, I suppose. It's very good, Eleanor. It means he finally understood he has no case. Or that he has no money to keep paying lawyers. Probably both. Do you know how he is? Margaret paused. I took the liberty of investigating a bit. Not officially, just as a concerned friend. He's living in a rented room in the North Side. He's working as a food delivery driver. Chloe won't let him see the kids. She filed for divorce and is demanding full child support. Child support. When he has nothing. Exactly. It's her revenge. She didn't get your money, so now she's destroying him another way. That woman is dangerous, Eleanor. You were lucky to protect yourself when you did. It wasn't luck. It was survival. After hanging up with Margaret, I kept thinking about Julian. In that rented room. In that menial job. In that devastating loneliness. A part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, wanted to go find him, to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. But another part, the part that had learned to set boundaries, knew that would be a mistake. Julian needed to live the consequences of his decisions. He needed to feel the weight of what he had done. Only then could he grow. Only then could he truly change. 2 weeks later, as I was returning from yoga, I saw him. He was on the corner of my street, in the uniform of a food delivery app, his scooter parked next to him, looking up at my building. He wasn't coming up. He wasn't ringing the bell. Just looking. I stopped half a block away. I could turn around. I could avoid him. But something in his posture, in the way his shoulders slumped in defeat, stopped me. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. He saw me approaching. His face showed surprise, then shame, then something like relief. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. "Julian." We stood there, 2 yards apart, like two strangers who were once everything to each other. "Did you get my letter?" he asked. "Yes." I didn't expect an answer. I just needed you to know how I feel. "How do you feel, Julian? Enlighten me. Because 2 months ago, you yelled at me and humiliated me. A month ago, you sued me. And now you're standing here with a look of regret. So tell me, what do you really feel?" He looked down. "Shame. I feel ashamed. I feel stupid. I feel like the worst son in the world." "Good. You should feel that way. I deserve it. I deserve that, and more." A car passed, honking. We moved against the building wall. Julian looked thinner, older. The uniform was too big for him, as if it were designed for someone else. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his hands were shaking slightly. "Are you eating well?" I asked before I could stop myself. He smiled sadly. "Now you sound like my mom." "I am your mom, Julian. As much as you've tried to forget it." "I never forgot. I just ignored it. I thought I could treat you however I wanted because you'd always be there. Because mothers always forgive. Because a mother's love is unconditional. Love can be unconditional. Respect is not. You're right, as always. Not always, Julian. I made mistakes with you. I made them with both of you. I overprotected you. I gave you too much. I didn't teach you to value hard work because I wanted you to have what I never had. But in doing so, I left you weak. It wasn't your fault. I made my own decisions. I chose Chloe, knowing something was wrong. I chose to ignore your warnings. I chose to treat you badly because she convinced me you were the obstacle between us and happiness. And now that she's gone, you've woken up." Julian nodded. "I woke up when it was already too late. When I had already lost everything. My wife, my kids, my job, my dignity, and you. Above all, you." A woman came out of the building with her dog. She looked at us curiously before walking on. The sun was beating down. It was hot. Julian's uniform had sweat stains under the arms. "You can't just stand here on the street," I said finally. "Come up." Julian looked up, surprised. "Really? 5 minutes. That's all." We rode up the elevator in silence. The enclosed space made everything more awkward. Julian watched the numbers light up. I watched my reflection in the metal doors. We looked so different, like two people who no longer recognized each other. In the apartment, I offered him water. He drank it in one gulp. I offered him another. He drank that one quickly, too. When I offered him food, his eyes filled with tears. "I didn't come for food, Mom. I know. But you're hungry. I can see it." I heated up soup I had made the day before. Toast. Cheese. I put it all on the table. Julian ate in silence, his head down, as if every bite were another humiliation he had to swallow. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Thank you." "You're welcome. I don't just mean for the food, I mean for letting me in, for not spitting in my face, for treating me with more dignity than I treated you. I'm not like you, Julian. I don't enjoy humiliating people." The blow was direct. He felt it. He flinched as if I had physically slapped him. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything I did, everything I said, everything I allowed her to do to you. She didn't do anything to me that you didn't allow, Julian. Chloe was the architect, but you were the enforcer. You chose to yell at me. You chose to tell me to shut up. You chose to try to take my home. I know, and I'm going to live with that for the rest of my life." We sat in silence for several minutes. The wall clock ticked off the seconds. Outside, you could hear children playing in the park. Life went on, indifferent to our pain. "What do you want from me, Julian? What do you expect me to do?" He looked up. "Nothing. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you. To tell you in person that I'm sorry. That you were right to protect yourself. That I wish I had been the son you deserved instead of the one I was. You still can be. How? After everything I did, how can I fix this? I leaned forward. It doesn't get fixed in a day, Julian. Not in a month. Maybe not even in a year. But it starts with fixing your life. By getting out of the hole Chloe left you in. By fighting to see your kids. By becoming the man your father would have wanted you to be. Dad would be so disappointed in me. Yes, he would be. But he would also be proud to see you get up. Arthur fell many times, Julian. Life hit him hard. But he always got up. He always kept going. That's what you're missing. Resilience. Julian wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know if I can do it alone. Then get help. Evan is in therapy. It's working for him. Maybe it will work for you. I don't have money for therapy. There are free clinics. There are support groups. There are ways. If you really want to change, you'll find a way. He stood up. I have to go. I have deliveries pending. If I don't meet my quota, they fine me. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Can I come back? Not for food, just to talk. To show you I'm trying to change. I thought about it carefully. You can come back, but with conditions. No drama, no manipulation. No trying to make me feel guilty. If you come honestly, with respect. He nodded. Deal. Julian came back 2 weeks later. This time he called before coming. Mom, can I visit on Saturday afternoon? His voice sounded different, less desperate, calmer. Yes, 4 o'clock is fine. He arrived on time. He brought a small bag with pastries from a neighborhood bakery. It's not much, he said, but I wanted to bring something. I accepted it. The gesture mattered more than the gift. We sat in the living room. This time the conversation flowed more naturally. He told me about his job, the deliveries, the nice customers and the rude ones, the tips that sometimes saved his day. He also told me he had found a mental health clinic that offered low-cost therapy. I went to my first session 3 days ago. How did it go? Hard. The therapist asked me questions I didn't want to answer. About Chloe. About my relationship with you. About why I always needed external approval to feel worthy. And what did you answer? That I don't know. But I want to find out. That's a good start, Julian. He also talked about his children. He missed them deeply. Chloe wouldn't let him see them. She said he was a bad example. That until he had financial stability, he didn't deserve to be a father. I hired a public defender, he told me. He's going to fight for visitation. He says I have rights, even if I don't have money. You do have rights. You're their father. Chloe says I gave up being their father when I failed to provide for them. Chloe says a lot of things, mostly lies designed to hurt. Julian smiled sadly. How did I not see that before? How could I have been so blind? Love is blind, Julian, especially when the other person is an expert at manipulation. He stayed for an hour. Before leaving, he asked if he could come back next week. I said yes. This time when he left, I didn't feel the weight of betrayal. I felt something like hope, cautious, fragile, but it was there. Evan found out Julian was visiting me. He was worried. Mom, be careful. I don't want him to hurt you again. I am being careful, Evan, but I'm also giving him a chance. Like I gave you. Evan nodded. I understand. I just don't want you to confuse remorse with manipulation. Julian is good at saying what you want to hear, I know. That's why I'm watching his actions. Not just his words. Julian's visits became regular, every Saturday at 4. Sometimes he brought bread. Other times, cheap flowers from the market. He always arrived on time. He always left when he said he would. He never asked for money. He never tried to manipulate me. He just talked. He told me about his week, about his progress in therapy, about his small victories. One day he told me something that surprised me. The therapist says part of my problem is that I never learned to value what I had, that I was always looking for more without appreciating what was enough. He says it comes from an internal emptiness that no amount of money or possessions can fill. Your therapist is wise. He's making me write letters. Of gratitude. Things I'm grateful for. It's harder than I thought. I've spent so much time focusing on what I don't have that I forgot to see what I did have. And what have you written? Julian took out a small notebook. I'm embarrassed, but I want to read one to you. He opened the notebook. His handwriting was more careful than the previous letter, more deliberate. He began to read. I am grateful for my mother, for the nights she stayed awake when I had a fever, for the lunches she packed every day for school, for the times she defended my dreams even when she didn't understand them, for continuing to breathe after my father died so I wouldn't be alone, for not slamming the door in my face when I deserved it, for teaching me, by her example, that dignity matters more than comfort, for being stronger than I will ever be. He closed the notebook. His eyes were wet. That's what I wrote last night. I couldn't speak. Tears were rolling down my cheeks without permission. Julian moved closer and took my hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't see all of that when I had it. The months passed. Fall arrived with its amber-colored leaves falling in the streets. Yoga classes had made me more flexible. The book club had given me new friends. The foundation had given me purpose. And my sons, slowly, had given me hope. Evan organized a Christmas dinner. Small. Just us. You, me, Paige, the kids, and Julian. If you want to invite him, he told me. I want to invite him. Christmas Eve arrived with a soft rain. Evan's apartment was decorated modestly but with love. Warm lights, a small tree, gifts wrapped in recycled paper. Julian arrived with a cake he had bought with his tips from the week. It's not much, he said, but I wanted to contribute. The kids ran to him. Uncle Julian! They hadn't seen him in months. Chloe had blocked all contact, but Evan had fought legally and won supervised visits. This was the first time Julian had seen his nephews in almost half a year. Dinner was quiet. We talked, we laughed. The kids told bad jokes. Paige served turkey with cranberry sauce. Evan made a toast to family, to new beginnings, to forgiveness. Julian looked at me across the table. He raised his glass to me. His eyes said what his mouth couldn't articulate at that moment. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. After dinner, while the kids played with their new gifts, Julian approached me in the kitchen. I have news. The judge granted me visitation with my kids. 2 Saturdays a month. Supervised for now, but it's a start. That's wonderful, Julian. And I got a better job. In a warehouse. It's not glamorous, but it pays more than deliveries and has benefits. I start in January. You're rebuilding your life. He nodded. Slowly. But yes. The therapist says progress isn't linear, that I'm going to have bad days. But he also says that every right decision brings me closer to the person I want to be. Your father would be proud. Julian's eyes filled with tears. You think so? I know so. He hugged me then. A real hug. Not desperate or manipulative. Just a son hugging his mother. And I hugged him back. Because that's what mothers do. They forgive when the remorse is genuine. They give chances when the change is real. But they also protect themselves. They also set boundaries. They also say no when necessary. That night, on the way back to my apartment, I looked out the taxi window. The city was shining with Christmas lights. Families walked together on the streets. The world kept spinning. Life went on. I thought about everything that had happened. The humiliation, the betrayal, the pain. But I also thought about the strength I had found, the boundaries I had set, the dignity I had reclaimed. I had lost a lot, but I had gained more. I had gained self-respect. I had gained peace. I had gained the certainty that I could survive alone if necessary. And I wasn't alone. I had Evan, who was doing the work to change. I had Julian, who was finally waking up. I had Margaret, my faithful friend. I had my book club, my yoga partners, the women at the foundation. I had a life. My life. Not the one others had planned for me. Not the one that had been imposed on me. But the one I had chosen to build after everything fell apart. The apartment greeted me in silence. I turned on the lights. I made tea. I sat in my favorite armchair, with a blanket over my legs. Outside, it was still raining softly. The sound of the drops against the window was relaxing. I checked my phone. I had a message from Evan. "Thanks for coming, Mom. The kids are happy. Paige is happy. I'm happy. We love you." Another message. This one from Julian. "Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm going to spend my life trying to be worthy of your forgiveness. Merry Christmas, Mom." I replied to both. "I love you. Merry Christmas." And it was true. I loved them. Despite everything, despite the pain, because a mother's love doesn't disappear. It just transforms. It becomes wiser, more careful, more aware. 6 months after that Christmas, my life had found a balance I never thought possible. It wasn't the life I had imagined when Arthur was alive. It wasn't the perfect family I had dreamed of raising. It was something different, something real, something earned with pain and rebuilt with dignity. My morning started early, yoga at 7, then a quiet breakfast on my balcony, watching the city wake up. The days no longer felt empty or heavy. They felt like mine. Julian had kept his word. Every Saturday, he came to visit. He no longer brought gifts, just his presence. He told me about his job at the warehouse, about his therapy sessions, about the visits with his children, which were no longer supervised. The judge had seen his progress and expanded his rights. Now he could take them to his small apartment 2 weekends a month. One day he brought me photos. "Look, Mom." I took them to the park. We played soccer. Santiago scored 2 goals. Miranda built a sandcastle. I looked at them, smiling. They look happy. They are, and so am I. For the first time in years, I'm happy without needing anything external, without depending on Chloe, without depending on money I don't have. Just being a dad. That's all that matters, Julian. He also told me that Chloe had tried to come back. She wanted to return. She had broken up with the man she'd left for. She needed financial help. She thought Julian would be an easy target again. "And what did you tell her?" I asked. I told her no, that we could be civil co-parents for our children, but that our relationship as a couple was over forever. She got angry. She threatened me. But I'm not afraid of her anymore. The therapist helped me see that her power over me only existed because I gave it to her. "I'm proud of you." Julian looked at me with bright eyes. "I never thought I'd hear you say that again." "Well, listen to it good. I'm proud of the man you are choosing to be." Evan had also changed. He was still in therapy. He had learned to set boundaries, to say no, to defend his convictions. One day, he came to one of our weekly dinners with news. "Mom, I quit my job." "Why?" "I thought it was going well. It was going well financially, but it was killing me emotionally. My boss was abusive. He would yell at me in front of others. He made me stay late without overtime pay. And I let him because I was afraid of being unemployed. But my therapist asked me something that changed my perspective. He asked, would you rather have money and lose your dignity, or have less money and keep your soul? And you chose your soul. I chose my soul. I got another job. It pays a little less, but they treat me with respect. I'm worth more than a paycheck, Mom. Yes, Evan, you are worth so much more. The brothers had also begun to rebuild their relationship. It was difficult at first. There was resentment on both sides. Julian blamed Evan for not defending him sooner. Evan blamed Julian for hurting me so badly. But slowly, with conscious effort, they began to heal. One Sunday, they invited me to lunch. The three of us, Evan, Julian, and me, at a simple restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy. Just a table, 3 plates of food, and an honest conversation. Mom, Evan began, we want to talk about the house. I felt my body tense immediately. Here we go again, I thought. Julian held up his hand. No, Mom, it's not what you think. We just want you to know that we respect your decision. The trust, the foundation, all of it. We understand why you did it, and we agree. Evan nodded. We had a long talk, Julian and I, about inheritances, about expectations, about how we never should have assumed we had a right to your assets. That house is yours. You earned it. You paid for it. It's your decision what to do with it. And we decided something else, Julian continued. When you're no longer here, many, many years from now, we're not going to fight over anything. We're not going to claim anything. We're going to honor your memory by being better men than we were. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't speak. I just nodded as they both took my hands. We mean it, Mom, Evan said. It's not about the money anymore. It's about you, about valuing you while you're here, about not waiting until it's too late. That conversation freed me from a weight I didn't know I was still carrying, the constant fear that this was all temporary, that the remorse was fake, that at any moment we'd be back at the beginning. But we didn't go back. We kept moving forward. The foundation asked me to give a talk to a group of older women who were going through similar situations: family abuse, financial manipulation, children who treated them like disposable objects. I was nervous all week. Margaret helped me prepare what I would say. You don't need a perfect speech, Eleanor. You just need your truth. The room was full, 30 women of different ages, all with stories like mine. I stood in front of them, hands shaking and heart racing. My name is Eleanor. I am 62 years old. And almost a year ago, my son yelled at me to be quiet when the adults are talking. The silence in the room was absolute. 30 pairs of eyes looked at me with immediate understanding. I told them my story. No embellishments, no drama. Just the facts, the manipulation, the humiliation, the decision to protect myself, the consequences, the rebuilding. When I finished, a woman raised her hand. How did you know it was the right time to act? I didn't. I just knew I couldn't keep waiting for things to get better on their own. Change never comes from passive hope. It comes from decisive action, another woman asked. Did your sons really change? Or are they just acting until they get what they want? That is the question I ask myself every day. And the answer is, I don't know for sure. But what I do know is this. I no longer base my peace on their behavior. I no longer depend on their validation. If they've changed, wonderful. If they haven't, I am going to be okay anyway. The women applauded. Some were crying. Others nodded in recognition. After the talk, several women approached me. They hugged me. They thanked me. They told me their own stories. One of them, a woman named Yasmin, 70 years old, told me something I'll never forget. I spent 40 years being a mother. I forgot how to be Yasmin. Your story reminded me I can be both. I can love my children and also love myself. Exactly, I told her. They aren't mutually exclusive. That night, back home, I sat in my favorite armchair. The apartment was silent. A silence that no longer scared me. It was a silence full of possibility, of peace, of freedom. I looked at the walls. The family photos I had hung back up. But now they were mixed with new photos. My friends from the book club. My yoga partners. The women from the foundation. My life had expanded beyond just being a mother. I was a friend. I was a mentor. I was Eleanor. The phone rang. It was Julian. Mom, just calling to say goodnight, and to say, I love you. I love you too, son. Then Evan called. The same. Good night, Mom. We love you. Good night, Evan. I hung up and smiled. I had come so far from that terrible day, from that meeting, from that humiliation. The road had been painful. I had lost the family I knew, but I had gained something better. A conscious family. A family that chose to be together, not out of obligation or convenience, but out of genuine love and mutual respect. I stood up and walked to the balcony. The night was clear. The stars shone over the city. A soft breeze moved the plants I had potted. The jasmine climbing the wall filled the air with its sweet scent. I thought of Arthur, how much I still missed him, but also how much I had grown since his death. He would have been proud. He would have applauded my courage. He would have celebrated my rebirth. I did it, Arthur, I whispered to the wind. I defended myself. I saved myself. And I saved our sons, too, even if they didn't know it at the time. A shooting star crossed the sky. I made a wish. Not for money, not for revenge, not for validation. I wished for peace. For me, for my sons. For all the women who were fighting similar battles in silence. I went into the apartment. I made tea. I wrapped myself in my favorite blanket. I opened the book I was reading for the group. But before I started, I took out my journal. I had started writing a few months ago. Evan's therapist had suggested I try it. I wrote, "Today I gave a talk. I told my story. And in telling it, I understood something fundamental. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And there is a huge difference between the two. The victim gets stuck in the pain. The survivor uses the pain as fuel to grow. I choose to be a survivor. I choose to grow. I choose to live." I closed the journal. I drank my tea. I opened my book. And I read until my eyes grew tired and sleep came naturally, peacefully. That night, I dreamed of gardens full of flowers, with children's laughter, with Arthur smiling at me from a distance. And when I woke up the next morning, the sun was streaming through my window, illuminating my room with golden light. It was a new day, and I was ready to live it, on my own terms, with my dignity intact, with my heart healed, with my future in my hands. It is 4 a.m, and a wild scream cuts through the walls of my apartment building like a knife. A sharp, hysterical scream, full of rage. I hear violent pounding against my door. Thump, thump, thump. The neighbors are turning on their lights. Someone pokes their head into the hallway, and I, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea in my hands, do not move. Not 1 inch. Because I know exactly who is out there. And I know exactly why she is screaming. My daughter-in-law, Chloe, has just discovered that I changed the locks on my apartment. My apartment. The one I bought with 40 years of work. The one I paid for by cleaning offices at night, scrubbing floors at dawn, hauling trash bags that weighed more than my soul. This place is mine. And today, finally, I locked it again. But for you to understand why I got to this point, I need to tell you the whole story. I need you to know who I am, and who I thought my daughter-in-law was. My name is Grace. I am 66 years old. I have been a widow for 15 years. My husband died of a heart attack one winter night, without warning, without a goodbye. He left me alone with a 12-year-old son and a mountain of bills. I didn't have time to grieve. I had to clean. I had to work 3 shifts so that Mark, my son, could study, so he could have clean clothes, so he would never feel like he was missing anything. I raised him by myself, without help, without complaints, because that's what mothers do, right? We break ourselves in silence so they can grow up whole, and Mark grew up well. He graduated. He got a good job at a tech company. He met a girl, Chloe, a tall woman with a perfect smile and always immaculate nails. The first time I saw her, I thought, how elegant, how polite, how lucky my son is. When Mark told me they were getting married, I cried with happiness. Finally, I was going to have a complete family again. Finally, I was going to have someone else in this silent house. Because yes, they didn't have anywhere to live at first. They were saving money for their own place. And I, like the fool I was, opened my door wide. I told them to stay as long as they needed, that my house was their house. Mark hugged me. Chloe smiled, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought a mother should always help her children. Always. The first few months were good. Chloe cooked sometimes. She would ask me how my day was. She called me Mom with such affection. Mark worked a lot, came home late, but he always gave me a kiss on the forehead before going to sleep. I felt useful. I felt loved. I even started to think that maybe the loneliness was over forever. But then something changed. It was subtle at first. So subtle I didn't even notice. Chloe started moving things around. One day I came home, and my favorite vase, the one my husband gave me, was no longer on the table. It was stored in a closet. When I asked, she said, "Oh, Mom, it just looked so old-fashioned there. It doesn't match anything." She smiled. And I swallowed my discomfort, because I didn't want to seem difficult. I didn't want to seem like the bitter mother-in-law from the stories. Then it was my armchair, the armchair where I sat to watch TV every night. One day I arrived and there was a new piece of furniture in its place. Modern. Uncomfortable. Chloe explained that she had bought it because we needed to update the space a bit. We needed. As if this apartment belonged to both of them. as if she had the right to decide what stayed and what went. But I said nothing, because Mark seemed happy, and I didn't want to ruin his happiness. So I smiled, I nodded, and I sat on that horrible piece of furniture that hurt my back. After that came the friends. Chloe started inviting her friends to my apartment. Without telling me, I would arrive from work, exhausted, with swollen feet, and find 4 women laughing in my living room, drinking wine, with loud music. The first time it happened, Chloe told me, "Oh, sorry, Mom, I forgot to tell you. But don't worry, we're almost leaving." But they didn't leave. They stayed until 11 o'clock at night. And I had to lock myself in my room because I couldn't even rest in my own house. The second time it happened, I tried to talk to Mark. I told him I would like them to let me know before bringing people over. He sighed. He looked at me with exhaustion, and he told me, "Mom, it's just for a little while. Don't be so strict. Chloe just wants to feel comfortable here." Feel comfortable. Those words stuck in me like needles, because I wanted to feel comfortable too, in my own house. But apparently my comfort no longer mattered. What mattered was that Chloe was happy, that Chloe didn't feel uncomfortable, that Chloe could do whatever she wanted. And I, the owner of the apartment, the one who had paid every cent for this place, had to shut up and endure it. I had to be understanding. I had to be patient. Because if not, I would be the bad guy in the story. The problematic mother-in-law. The bitter old woman who doesn't let the young people live. But the worst was yet to come. Because one afternoon, when I returned from the grocery store, I found Chloe in my bedroom. In my bedroom. She was going through my closet, taking out my clothes. My dress is the wine-colored one, the sand-colored, the pearl gray. She was putting them in bags. When she saw me, she didn't startle. She didn't apologize. She just looked at me and said, "Mom, we need space for our things. You have too many old clothes. I'm going to donate these." "Yes." And she held up a bag with my dresses inside. Dresses I had bought with my own money. Dresses that held memories. One was dark green. I wore it the day Mark graduated. Another was peach-colored. My husband gave it to me for our anniversary, and she was going to throw them away, as if they were trash, as if my life was trash. Something inside me broke in that moment. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just took the bag from her hands and said, in a calm voice, "Chloe, these are my clothes. And this is my room. Do not come in here again without my permission." She blinked. She looked at me as if I had just insulted her. And then she left the room without saying a word. That night, Mark came home furious. He told me I had made Chloe feel bad, that she was only trying to help, that I was being selfish. Selfish. Me. The one who had opened the doors of my home to them. The one who had given up my privacy, my peace, my space. And now it turned out I was the selfish one. I went to sleep crying that night. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. That in my own house, I no longer had a voice or a vote, and that this was just the beginning. The weeks passed, and the situation worsened. Chloe no longer asked for permission for anything. She simply did what she wanted. One day I arrived, and she had turned the guest room into her personal dressing room. The entire room, filled with clothes, shoes, bags. She had removed the bed where Evelyn, my neighbor, slept when she came to visit me. She had thrown away the sheets I kept in there. And when I asked her what had happened, she looked at me with those cold eyes and said, "I just needed space for my things, Mom. You understand, right?" No, I didn't understand. But I no longer knew how to defend myself without seeming like the villain. Then the strange people started arriving. Chloe had started an online sales business, and she was using my apartment as a warehouse. Boxes and more boxes stacked in the hallway, in the living room, even in the kitchen. I was tripping over them every time I left my room. And when I complained, Mark told me, "Mom, it's temporary. She's building her future. Can't you support her a little?" Support her. I was already supporting her. I was giving her a roof over her head. But now I also had to put up with my house looking like a depot, with delivery drivers coming in and out at all hours, with strangers ringing my doorbell looking for packages. And the worst part is that Chloe never thanked me. Never. She acted as if all this was her right, as if I owed her something. One night, I arrived tired after cleaning 3 floors of offices. My knees hurt, my back hurt. I just wanted to get home, take a hot bath and go to bed. But when I opened the door, I found music blasting. There was a party in my living room. People I didn't know, drinking, laughing, smoking. The smoke hit my face as soon as I walked in. I froze in the entryway. Chloe was in the center, a glass in her hand, laughing with her friends. When she saw me, she waved her hand, as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, Mom, I didn't know you'd be home so early. We're celebrating. I made a lot of sales this week." And she kept laughing. No one greeted me. No one turned down the music. No one put out their cigarette. I felt invisible. In my own house, I was invisible. I locked myself in my room. I cried silently so they wouldn't hear me. And I listened to the party until 3 in the morning. Until they left. Until there was finally silence. The next day when I came out, I found my living room destroyed. Dirty glasses everywhere. Stains on the sofa. A broken bottle on the floor. And Chloe was sleeping peacefully in her room. She didn't clean anything. So I cleaned. As always. Because if I didn't do it, no one would. And because I was already used to cleaning up other people's messes. I had cleaned other people's offices for 40 years. Now I was cleaning up my daughter-in-law's mess in my own home. I tried to talk to Mark again. This time I sought him out at his job. I went all the way to his office. I needed him to listen to me without Chloe being present. I told him everything. I told him I couldn't take it anymore. That I needed my space. That I felt steamrolled in my own house. He listened to me. But when I finished speaking, he sighed deeply and told me, "Mom, I know it's hard, but we're saving money. We just need a few more months. Please, be patient." A few more months. They had already been living with me for a year and a half, and every day was worse. But I nodded. Because he was my son. Because I loved him. Because I didn't want to lose him. So I swallowed my pain once more and went home in silence. But then something happened that chilled my blood. One afternoon I came home from the market with heavy bags. I climbed the stairs slowly because the elevator was broken. And when I reached my floor, I heard voices in my apartment. Voices I didn't recognize. I opened the door carefully and froze. Chloe was with a man in a suit, elegant, with a briefcase. And they were walking through my living room as if they were at an exhibition. The man was taking notes, looking at the walls, measuring with his eyes. And then I heard the words that shattered me. "This apartment is a good size. Excellent location. It could sell easily for around $120,000. Maybe more." Chloe nodded. She smiled and said, "Perfect. You see, my mother-in-law is very old. She's going to need to move somewhere with more care soon. And we need our own space. You know, my mother-in-law is very old. As if I were a burden. As if I were a problem that needed to be solved. As if my life, my home, my refuge were something to be gotten rid of." I dropped the bags. The noise made them both turn around. Chloe turned pale for a second. Just a second. Then she recovered that fake smile and said, "Oh, Mom, you scared me. This is Mr. Davies. He's a real estate agent. He was just, giving me some advice. You know, for the future. For the future. My future. The future of my apartment, Mr." Davies looked at me uncomfortably, muttered something about a call he had to make, and left quickly. Chloe stood there, still smiling, as if she had done nothing wrong. I asked her what she was doing. She answered me calmly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Mom, I'm just planning. Mark and I have talked. You can't live alone forever. This place is too big for you. It would be better to sell it and move you somewhere more comfortable. With nurses, with people your age. A place with nurses. A nursing home. She wanted to put me in a nursing home. And sell my apartment. The apartment I bought with my sweat. With my hands, cracked from so much cleaning. With my sleepless nights working double shifts. And she wanted to take it from me. She wanted to kick me out of my own house and keep everything. I told her to leave. I told her to get out of my apartment immediately. She laughed. She laughed and told me, "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. I'm just thinking of what's best for you." And she went to her room, as if nothing, as if I had no right to be furious, as if my life was worth nothing. That night I waited for Mark. I told him everything. I showed him the business card the agent had left forgotten on the table. I told him Chloe was planning to sell my apartment without my permission. And do you know what he told me? Do you know what my son told me? My son whom I raised alone, to whom I gave everything. He told me, "Mom, it's not that serious. She was just exploring options. Maybe she's right. Maybe it would be better for you to be somewhere they can take care of you." In that moment, I knew I had lost him, that Chloe had poisoned him completely, that my son no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as a burden, as an obstacle, as something old that needed to be put on a shelf and forgotten. I went to my room without saying another word. I closed the door, and for the first time in many years I felt a deep hatred, not towards Mark, but towards myself, for having been so weak, for having allowed this to go so far, for having sacrificed my dignity, trying to be the perfect mother. But that night, something changed in me. Something hardened, because I realized that if I didn't defend myself, no one would, and that the time had come to take back my life. The next morning I woke up with a clarity I hadn't had in months. I looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman, wrinkled, but not defeated. Not yet. I was 66 years old, but I wasn't dead, and this apartment was mine, legally mine. No one could take it from me. No one. Not even my own daughter-in-law with her fake smiles and her twisted plans. So I made a decision. I was going to fight back, but not by screaming, not by crying, but in the smartest way possible. With proof, with evidence, with the law on my side. Because if 40 years of cleaning offices had taught me anything, it was this. The powerful always have lawyers, and the weak have to be smarter. That afternoon, after work, I went to look for Evelyn, my neighbor from the 4th floor. Evelyn is 70 years old and has lived in this building longer than I have. She is a wise woman, the kind who sees everything without saying anything. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, she saw my face and knew immediately that something was wrong. She had me come in. She made me tea, and she listened. I told her everything, from the beginning. The changed furniture, the clothes she almost threw away, the parties, the real estate agent, everything. When I finished, Evelyn took my hand and told me something I will never forget. "Grace, a mother's love doesn't mean letting yourself be trampled. It means teaching them respect. And you never taught your daughter-in-law where the boundaries are. Now you have to set them. Before it's too late." She asked me if I had any proof of what Chloe was doing. I told her no, that everything had been verbal, that I had nothing concrete. Evelyn thought for a moment and then told me, "Then get proof, record hair, take pictures, save messages, whatever it takes. Because if this goes legal, you're going to need more than your word." She was right, so I started. I bought a new phone with a better camera. I started documenting everything. Every box that arrived, every party, everything Chloe moved or changed without my permission. And most importantly, I started recording conversations. Not all of them, just the important ones. The ones that showed her real intentions. I didn't have to wait long. A week later, Chloe invited her friends over again. I was in my room, but I left the door ajar, and I recorded. I heard them talking, laughing, and then one of them asked her, "So when are you two moving into your own place?" Chloe laughed. That laugh I knew so well. And she replied, "Why? This place is already ours." Well, it's still in the old woman's name, but I'm working on that. Mark has almost convinced her to sign a power of attorney. Once we have that, we can do whatever we want. Sell, rent it out, whatever. And she can go to a nursing home. After all, she's not good for anything anymore, except cleaning. My heart stopped for a second. A power of attorney. They wanted me to sign a power of attorney. That meant they could make legal decisions for me. Sell my apartment. Manage my money. Everything. Without me being able to do anything. And Mark was in on the plan. My own son. The child I raised. The one I held in my arms when he cried. The one I fed with my own body when I didn't even have money for milk. He was planning to take everything from me. I kept recording. I recorded everything. Every poisonous word that came out of Chloe's mouth, every cruel laugh, every twisted plan. And when they finished and left, I saved that recording as if it were gold. Because it was. It was my weapon, my salvation. The next day, I went to look for a lawyer. I searched online. I read reviews, and I found one who had a good reputation and offered a free consultation. His name was Mr. Harrison, an older man, about 65 years old, with thick glasses and a kind smile. I went to his office with all my proof, the recordings, the photos, everything. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and told me, "Mrs. Grace, you are in danger. What your daughter-in-law is trying to do is called fraud. And if she manages to get you to sign that power of attorney under false pretenses, you could lose everything, legally." He explained that many elderly people fall into these traps, that they sign documents without understanding what they mean, that they trust their children or relatives and end up on the street, without a house, without money, without anything. He told me I had been lucky, that I had discovered the plan in time, and that now we had to act fast. I asked him what I could do. He told me that first, we needed to secure my apartment, that no one could sell or transfer it without my physical presence and my identification, that he would put alerts on the property deed, that I should change my passwords, that I should not sign anything, absolutely nothing, without consulting him first. He also suggested something else, something that at the time seemed extreme, but now I understand was necessary. He told me, "Mrs. Grace, you have the right to ask them to leave. This is your apartment. You did not sign any lease agreement with them. They are there out of your goodwill, and that goodwill can end whenever you decide. You can give them a 30-day notice. Or, if you feel in danger, you can change the locks. It is your legal right, change the locks." The idea terrified me, but it also liberated me, because it meant I had the power, that I could get my space back, my peace, my life. I left that office with a plan. Mr. Harrison gave me documents to sign, authorizations to protect my property. He gave me his personal number. He told me to call him if anything happened, and he told me something else, something that made me cry right there in his office. "You are not a bad mother for defending yourself. You are a smart mother, and your son needs to learn this lesson. Because if you don't teach it to him, life will teach it to him in a much harder way." He was right. Mark needed to wake up, and I needed to be strong. For the first time in my life, I needed to put my needs first, before my son's, before anyone else's. I returned home with a strange feeling, fear, but also something like hope. Chloe was in the living room with her boxes. She didn't even greet me. Mark wasn't there. He had gone to a work dinner. Perfect. I went into my room, I locked the door, and I started organizing everything. The documents Mr. Harrison had given me, the recordings, the photos, everything in a folder, everything labeled, everything ready for when I needed it, because I knew I was going to need it. I knew this was going to explode. But this time, I would be prepared. This time, I wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to be the one setting the rules. I barely slept that night. I stayed awake thinking about everything that had happened, about how I had gotten here, about how a woman who had worked her whole life, who had raised a son alone, who had fought against the world to survive, now had to fight against her own family to keep her home. It was unfair. It was painful. But it was real. And I wasn't going to run from that reality anymore. I was going to face it, with everything I had. Because if 40 years of scrubbing floors had taught me anything, it was this. Stains don't disappear on their own. You have to scrub them. You have to get them out, even if it hurts, even if it's tiring, even if you break your hands in the attempt. And Chloe was the biggest stain I had ever had to clean in my life. The next few days were an act. I pretended everything was normal. I smiled when I had to smile. I nodded when Chloe spoke. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. But inside, I was building my strategy, piece by piece. Every morning I left for work as usual. But some afternoons I didn't go straight home. I went to Mr. Harrison's office. We reviewed documents. We planned. He taught me things I never knew: how to protect my assets, how to prove someone was trying to defraud me, how to use the law in my favor, and most importantly, how not to let myself be emotionally manipulated. Because Chloe was an expert at that. At making me feel guilty, at making me feel like I was the problem. One afternoon, while I was cleaning an office downtown, I received a text from Mark. It said, "Mom, we need to talk. It's important. Tonight." My stomach twisted. I knew what was coming. I knew they were going to ask me to sign something. The famous power of attorney. Mr. Harrison had warned me this would happen, and he had told me exactly what to do. Don't show fear. Don't show anger. Just listen. And then say I needed time to think about it. That I wouldn't sign anything without reading it thoroughly. That it was my right. I took a deep breath. I put my phone away, and I kept cleaning, because cleaning had always calmed me. The repetitive motion, the smell of the soap, the shine of the floor after mopping. It made me feel like I still had control over something. I got home at 7 in the evening. Mark and Chloe were sitting in the living room, serious, as if they were about to give me bad news. I sat down across from them. Mark cleared his throat. He looked at Chloe. She nodded. And then he began. "Mom, we've been thinking a lot about your future, about your well-being. We know you work hard, that you get tired, that you're not as young as you used to be." I said nothing. I just looked at him. He continued. "We've seen some very nice residences, places where there are nurses all day, where you can do activities with people your age, where you don't have to worry about anything, and we think it would be good for you." Chloe chimed in with that syrupy voice I hated so much. "Yes, Mom. It's just that we worry about you. What if you fall and you're alone? What if you get sick? We work all day. We can't take care of you the way you deserve. Take care of me." What an irony. They had never taken care of me. But I stayed quiet. I waited. And then Mark took out some papers. He put them on the table and said, "To make the transition easier, we need you to sign this. It's a power of attorney, so we can handle the sale of the apartment and all the paperwork. That way you don't have to worry about anything legal. We'll take care of everything." There it was. The plan in black and white. They wanted me to sign away my life, my home, my future, everything into their hands. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at them, and with the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "I need to read this carefully and consult with someone. I don't sign anything without fully understanding what it means." Chloe's face changed immediately. Her smile vanished, and she said in a harder tone, "Consult with who? We're your family. Don't you trust us?" There it was. The manipulation, the guilt. But this time, it wasn't going to work. I took a deep breath and said, "It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of responsibility. These are legal documents. I need to understand them well." Mark got upset. I saw his jaw tighten. "Mom, don't make this difficult. It's just a piece of paper. To help you. To help me. To rob me, you mean." But I didn't say it. I just repeated, "I need time. 1 week. To read it properly." Chloe stood up abruptly. She grabbed the papers angrily and said, "You're unbelievable. We offer you help and you treat us like criminals. You're so ungrateful." And she went to her room, slamming the door. Mark looked at me with disappointment. He said nothing. He just shook his head and went after her. I was left alone in the living room, shaking, but also feeling something strange. Pride, because I hadn't given in. I hadn't signed. I had said no, and that was a power I had forgotten I had. That night I heard Chloe screaming from her room. I didn't understand everything she was saying, but I heard words like stubborn, old, stupid. I heard Mark trying to calm her down. And then I heard something that broke my heart. Chloe said, "If she doesn't sign, we have to get her out another way. We can't keep waiting. This apartment is worth a lot of money, and I'm not going to lose it because of your mother." And Mark said nothing. He didn't defend her. He didn't defend me. There was only silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. My son was no longer on my side. Maybe he never really was. Maybe he had only ever been on the side of his own comfort. The next morning I called Mr. Harrison. I told him what had happened. He told me I had done exactly the right thing, that I should not sign anything, ever, and that now we had to speed up the plan. He asked me if I was ready to take the next step, to change the locks, to reclaim my space, to legally evict them from my apartment. I told him yes, that I was ready, that I couldn't live like this anymore, that I would rather be alone than feel invaded in my own home. He told me he would get me a trusted locksmith, that we would do it on a day when Mark and Chloe were both out, that it would be quick and legal, and that he would be there with me for anything. We chose the day, a Friday. Mark had a work conference that lasted all day. Chloe had mentioned she was going to see her mother in the afternoon. It would be the perfect time. Mr. Harrison coordinated everything. The locksmith would arrive at 2 in the afternoon. I would call in sick to work, and by 4 in the afternoon, my apartment would have new locks. No one could get in without my permission. No one. The idea filled me with terror, but it also gave me a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years, because for the first time in a long time, I was going to decide who entered my life and who stayed out. The preceding days were agonizing. Chloe acted as if nothing had happened. She kept moving through my house as if it were hers. She kept bringing in boxes. She kept making plans. One day I heard her on the phone with someone talking about remodeling the kitchen, my kitchen. She talked about colors, about new cabinets, about changing everything, as if I no longer existed, as if I were already gone. And maybe in her mind I was. Maybe she had already erased me, but I was still here, and soon she was going to find that out in the worst possible way. Thursday night, I could hardly sleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that was going to happen, about how they would react, about whether Mark would ever forgive me, about whether I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered Evelyn's words. A mother's love doesn't mean letting yourself be trampled, and I remembered Mr. Harrison's words. You are not a bad mother for defending yourself. And I remembered something more important. I remembered the woman I was before all this. The woman who worked 3 shifts. The one who raised a son alone. The one who fought the world without giving up. That woman was still inside me. She had just been asleep, waiting for the moment to wake up. And tomorrow she was going to wake up roaring. Friday arrived. I got up early, earlier than usual. I made coffee. I drank it, looking out the window. The sun was just rising. Everything was quiet, peaceful. It was ironic, because in a few hours everything was going to explode. Mark left at 7. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, as always. He didn't know it would be the last kiss he would give me in a long time. Chloe left at 9. She didn't even say goodbye. She just grabbed her bag and left. I heard the door close. I heard her footsteps fading down the hall. And then I breathed. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath without feeling like someone was watching me, without feeling like someone was judging every move I made. I called work. I told them I was sick, that I couldn't come in. It sounded believable because my voice was trembling. But it wasn't from sickness. It was from fear, from nerves, from anticipation. Then I called Mr. Harrison. I told him they were gone, that the coast was clear. He told me the locksmith would arrive in an hour, that I should prepare, that I should take anything of value I had in shared spaces, that I should put it safely in my room, just in case. I obeyed. I went through my house gathering my things. My husband's vase, the family photos that were still on the walls, my box of memories that I kept in a living room closet. I put everything in my bedroom, and with every object I saved, I felt as if I were saving pieces of my soul. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. It was the locksmith, a young man, polite. He showed me his identification. I explained the situation briefly. He nodded. He told me he had seen cases like this before, that I shouldn't worry, that in half an hour everything would be ready. He started to work. I sat on the sofa, watching him, listening to the metallic sounds of the tools, the drill, the new pieces fitting into place. Every sound was a release. Every new piece was a shield, a barrier, a way of saying, this is mine, and no one else is getting in without my permission. 30 minutes later, He handed me 2 sets of new keys. He explained how they worked. He assured me that no one with the old keys could open the door. He wished me luck, and he left. I stood in front of the door, with the new keys in my hand, shiny, heavy, powerful. I clutched them to my chest. And I cried. I cried with relief. I cried with fear. I cried with guilt. But most of all, I cried with freedom. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like my house was mine again, that I was the owner of my life again. I dried my tears, took a deep breath, and then I started to prepare for what was coming. Because I knew that when Chloe arrived and saw she couldn't get in, she was going to cause a scene, a monumental scene, and I had to be ready. Mr. Harrison arrived at 4. He knocked with the code we had agreed upon. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. I opened. He came in with his briefcase. He asked me how I felt. I told him the truth. Terrified but firm. He smiled. He told me that was normal, that the important thing was not to doubt now, that this was legal, that it was my right. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter he had drafted. It was a formal notification. It said that Mark and Chloe had 30 days to vacate the apartment, that any attempt to enter without my permission would be considered trespassing, that I could call the police if necessary. He told me that when they arrived and couldn't get in, I should give them that letter. Under the door, without opening it, without arguing, just the letter and silence. He explained that they would probably try to manipulate me, that they would scream, that they would cry, that Mark would say painful things to me, that Chloe would call me a monster, but that I must not open that door, that I must not give in, that if I gave in, it would all have been in vain. He made me promise I wouldn't open it. I promised him, even though my heart was already breaking just thinking about Mark's face when he saw he couldn't get in. Mr. Harrison stayed with me until 6. We drank tea. We talked about unimportant things. I think he was doing it to distract me, to calm my nerves. And it worked a little. At 6, he left. He gave me his number again. He told me to call him if anything happened. Anything. And he left me alone. Alone with my new keys. Alone with my decision. Alone with my fear. The hours passed slowly. So slowly. I sat in my living room, now silent. No boxes. No strangers. No loud music. Just me. And the silence. A beautiful silence. A silence I had forgotten the sound of. I turned on the television. I watched the news. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was on the door, waiting, knowing that at any moment, it was all going to explode. And then, at 11 at night, I heard the elevator. I heard footsteps. I heard voices. Mark and Chloe. They were arriving. My heart started beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I heard them approach. I heard the key enter the lock. And then I heard the sound that would change everything. The sound of a key that doesn't work. That turns but doesn't open. That gets stuck. That doesn't fit. There was silence. Then I heard Chloe say, "What's wrong? Why won't it open?" Mark tried again. Nothing. He tried again. And again. And again. And then I heard his voice, confused, worried. "It's not working. The key isn't working." Chloe tried her key. Nothing either. And that's when it started. First, it was confusion. Then, it was panic. And finally, it was fury. Chloe started banging on the door. "Mom, open the door. The key isn't working. Open up." I didn't move. I stayed seated on my sofa, with the envelope in my hands, breathing. Just breathing. The pounding got louder, more desperate. "Grace, open this door right now." "What did you do? Did you change the locks? Are you crazy?" Mark started pounding too. "Mom, open up. What's going on? Mom, please." His voice broke me. It split me in two. But I didn't get up. I didn't go to the door. I stayed there, firm, remembering everything that had happened, everything they had done to me, everything they had planned to do to me. And then Chloe lost control completely. She started screaming like she had never screamed before. "Open this damn door. This is my house. All my things are in there. You can't do this to us. This is illegal." And she pounded. She pounded so hard I thought she would break the door. The neighbors' lights started turning on. I heard doors opening. Someone asked what was happening. Chloe screamed at them that I had thrown them out on the street, that I had changed the locks without telling them, that I was a crazy old woman. And then came the scream that woke up the whole building, the scream that made the dogs bark, the scream that cut through the walls like a knife. Chloe screamed with all her soul, "Grace, you are going to regret this. I swear you are going to regret this." And she kept pounding. Mark tried to calm her, but she was out of control. And then he exploded too. He started shouting, "Mom, how could you? Who gave you permission? Open this door now. You can't do this to us. I'm your son." And those words hurt me more than anything else. Because he was right. He was my son, the son I raised, the son I loved. And now he was on the other side of the door screaming at me as if I were his enemy. I stood up. I walked to the door, with the envelope in my hand, and I slid it underneath. In silence, the envelope appeared on the other side of the door. There was a brief silence. I heard someone pick it up. Then I heard the sound of paper tearing open, and then I heard Mark's voice reading aloud. First in silence, then in a low voice, and finally aloud so Chloe could hear. "Eviction notice. You have 30 days to remove your belongings. Any unauthorized attempt to enter will be reported to the authorities. Signed, Grace Herrera." Chloe exploded again, but this time it wasn't just fury. It was hysteria. It was panic, because she had just realized that she had lost, that her plan had failed, that I was not the foolish old woman she thought I was. "This can't be real. This isn't legal. You can't just kick us out like this. We live here. We have rights," she screamed, her voice breaking. She hit the door, but no longer with force. Now they were desperate hits, from someone who knows they've lost. Mark tried to speak. His voice was different, softer, more broken. "Mom, please, let's talk. Open the door. We can solve this. It doesn't have to be this way." But I didn't answer. I stayed on the other side, with my back against the door, feeling every blow as if it were against my own heart. But I didn't give in. I didn't open, because if I opened it at that moment, everything would have been in vain. All the pain, all the fear, all the courage I had gathered to get here, it would have been lost in a second of weakness. I heard Evelyn come out of her apartment. Her voice was calm but firm. "It's midnight. You are waking up the entire building. If you don't quiet down, I'm going to call the police." Chloe turned on her. "This isn't your problem, you nosy old woman. Mind your own business." But Evelyn didn't flinch. "My business is being able to sleep in peace. And you are disturbing the peace. You have two options. You quiet down, or I call the police. You decide." Mark intervened. "Mrs. Evelyn, please. It's a misunderstanding. My mother locked us out. We need to get in." Evelyn looked at him, and with a voice I had never heard from her, she said, "Mark, I've known your mother since she moved into this building. She is a good woman. And if she locked you out, it's because she had her reasons. Good reasons. Now, please leave, or I'm making the call." There was more silence. And then I heard Chloe's footsteps moving away, going down the stairs. She didn't wait for the elevator. She just ran down, like a wounded animal. Mark stayed a moment longer. I heard him breathing on the other side of the door. Heavy, tired, defeated. And then he spoke. But this time he didn't shout. He spoke low. So low I had to get close to the door to hear him. "Mom, I don't understand why you did this. I thought you loved me. I thought I could always count on you. But I guess I was wrong." And then he left. I heard his footsteps moving away too. Slow, heavy. And when the silence finally came, I collapsed. I fell to the floor, with my back against the door. And I cried. I cried, as I hadn't cried in years, because I had just lost my son. Or maybe I had just realized that I had lost him a long time ago. I don't know how long I was there, on the floor, crying. But at some point, I heard a soft knock on my door. Evelyn's code. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. I got up. I dried my face. I opened. She came in without a word. She hugged me, and I cried again. But this time in the arms of someone who understood me, someone who knew how hard this had been. We sat on the sofa. Evelyn made me tea, as she always did, and when I could finally speak, I said, "Did I do the right thing?" She took my hand. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Grace, you did the only thing you could do. Defend yourself. That is never wrong. Never." She told me she had heard everything, that the other neighbors had too, that everyone knew what Chloe had been doing, that they had seen her coming and going with boxes, with strange people, that they had heard the parties, the shouting, that everyone knew but no one knew how to help me, and that now everyone was on my side, that if I needed witnesses for anything legal, she would be the first to testify. Those words gave me a strength I didn't know I needed, because I realized I wasn't alone, that there were people who saw me, who supported me, who understood my pain. Evelyn stayed with me until 2 in the morning, and when she left, I felt a little less broken, a little less alone. I went to bed, but couldn't sleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mark, about his face when he was a child, about how he would hug me when he was scared, about how he used to tell me I was the best mom in the world. Where had that boy gone? When had he become the man shouting at me from the other side of the door? When had he stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an obstacle? I had no answers. I only had questions and pain. A lot of pain. But I also had something else. I had my house back. I had my peace. I had my dignity. And that had to be enough. For now, the following days were strange. The house was silent. An absolute silence. There was no music, no shouting, no boxes, no strange people, just me. And at first, that silence scared me, because I had wanted it so much that when I finally had it, I didn't know what to do with it. I would sit in my living room and just listen. The refrigerator, the cars on the street, the birds in the morning, simple sounds, sounds I had forgotten existed. And slowly, I began to heal, to recover, to remember what it was like to live without fear, without anxiety, without the constant feeling of being invaded. But Mark didn't give up. He started calling me, 10 times a day, 20. I didn't answer. Then the texts started. At first they were furious. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Open the door. We need to talk. You can't do this to us. I'm going to get a lawyer." But I didn't respond. Mr. Harrison had told me not to, that any communication had to be in writing and through him, to protect myself, to have everything documented. Then the messages changed. They became softer, more manipulative. "Mom, I miss you. I don't understand what I did wrong. I always loved you. Why are you doing this to me?" And those messages hurt more, because they touched the deepest wound, the guilt, that mother's guilt that never goes away, that voice that tells you that maybe you are the bad one, maybe you overreacted, maybe you should forgive. But then I would remember. I remembered Chloe with the real estate agent. I remembered the plans to put me in a nursing home. I remembered the power of attorney they wanted me to sign. I remembered every humiliation, every lack of respect, every moment I felt invisible in my own home. And the guilt would fade, because what I did wasn't cruelty. It was survival. It was self-love. It was justice. One afternoon, while cleaning my house, I found something under the sofa. A toy, a small car. From when Mark was a child, I picked it up. I cleaned it. And I sat with it in my hands. I remembered when I gave it to him. He was 5 years old. He was so happy. He played with that car for years. And now here it was, forgotten, under a sofa, like our relationship. Forgotten, buried, broken. I cried again. But this time it was different. I didn't cry for what I did. I cried for what I lost. Because the truth is, I didn't lose my son when I changed the locks. I lost him long before that. I lost him when he stopped listening to me. When he chose Chloe over me in every argument. When he stopped seeing me as a person with feelings and started seeing me as someone he could take advantage of. Changing the locks only made a loss that had already occurred visible. And accepting that was the most painful part of all. I put the car away. I put it in my box of memories, along with the photos, along with the old letters, along with everything that was left of the boy I raised, because the man he became was no longer mine. And maybe he never really was. A week passed. Then, too, Mark's messages became less frequent, the calls too. And one day, they just stopped. Total silence. And I don't know if that gave me relief or broke me more, because it meant he had given up, that he had chosen Chloe, that he had chosen resentment, and that I would have to learn to live with that choice. But it also meant I was free, that I could start over, that I could rebuild my life without fear, without invasion, without manipulation. And although it hurt, although I woke up at night with a tight chest, I knew I had done the right thing. Because sometimes loving means letting go, and sometimes surviving means closing doors. Even if they are the doors to your own son. 3 weeks after changing the locks, I received a call from Mr. Harrison. He told me that Mark had contacted a lawyer, that they were trying to prove I had no right to kick them out, that they had lived there for over a year, and that gave them tenants' rights. My heart sped up. I asked him if they could win. Mr. Harrison laughed. A soft but confident laugh. He told me no, that they never paid rent, that there was no contract, that they lived there out of my goodwill, and that goodwill had ended, that any judge would be on my side, especially with the proof we had. The recordings, the photos, the testimonies. He told me not to worry, that he would handle everything, and that I would probably receive a letter from Mark's lawyer in a few days, that I should not respond, that I should send it to him directly. And so I did. The letter arrived 4 days later. It was long, full of legal words I barely understood. But the message was clear. Mark was accusing me of emotional abandonment, of cruelty, of throwing them out on the street without justification. He said he had taken care of me for years, that he had supported me, that I was acting irrationally due to my advanced age, that I probably needed psychiatric help. Every word was a knife. Because my own son was using my age as a weapon. He was telling a judge that I was senile, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I needed someone else to make decisions for me. It was exactly what Chloe had planned from the beginning, and now Mark was executing it. I sent the letter to Mr. Harrison. He read it, and he called me 2 hours later. He was angry. I could hear it in his voice. He told me that letter was an insult, that it was pure manipulation, but that it was also a blessing, because now we had written proof of their intentions, of how they saw me, of how they planned to declare me incompetent to take my property. He told me he was going to respond to that letter with all the evidence we had, with the recordings where Chloe talked about the power of attorney, with the photos of the real estate agent in my apartment, with everything, and that when he was finished, any judge would see exactly who the victim was here. I felt relieved, but also deeply sad, because this was no longer a family fight. This was a legal battle. Cold, impersonal, painful. The days turned into weeks. I continued with my routine. I worked. I cleaned offices. I came home. But now my home was different. It was mine again. Slowly, I began to reclaim the spaces. I took out the horrible furniture Chloe had brought in. I put it in the trash. I put my old armchair back, the one I liked, the one that was comfortable. I rearranged the living room as it was before. I put my photos back on the walls, my vase on the table. Every change was a liberation. It was like removing layers of dirt I didn't know I was carrying. And little by little, my apartment began to feel like a home again, not like a battlefield. Evelyn came to visit me often. We drank tea, we talked. She told me stories about her own children, about how children sometimes disappoint, about how sometimes love is not enough, and her words comforted me, because they made me feel less alone in this pain. They made me understand that I wasn't the only mother who had had to make difficult decisions, that I wasn't the only one who had to choose between her son and her own survival, and that choosing survival didn't make me a bad mother. It made me human. It made me strong. It made me brave. One day, while I was cleaning an office, I found a magazine. It was open to an article about family abuse. It talked about how many elderly people suffer abuse from their own children. Economic abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. And I read every word as if they were talking about me, about my situation, about what I had lived through, and I realized something important. I did not exaggerate. I was not cruel. I was a victim who found the strength to fight back. And that was something I should be proud of, not ashamed. I saved that article. I took it home, and I put it in my folder of documents, not to show it to anyone, just to remind myself on the difficult days that what I lived through was real, that I didn't imagine it, that I wasn't crazy. The first month passed, then the second. And then Mr. Harrison called me with news. Mark's lawyer had withdrawn the case. They were not going to continue with the lawsuit. When I asked why, Mr. Harrison explained that they probably saw the evidence he sent, and they realized they had no case. That any judge would see the recordings and understand exactly what was happening, that fighting this would only make them look worse, and that Chloe had probably decided it was better to cut her losses and move on. I felt relieved, but also empty, because this meant that Mark had chosen. He had chosen not to fight for our relationship. He had chosen to give up. He had chosen Chloe over me once again. And even though it was what I expected, it hurt to confirm it. Mr. Harrison also told me something else. He said that during the legal process, he had done a little more research, and he had discovered that Chloe had a history, that she had done something similar with her previous family. With her first partner, she had tried to take properties that weren't hers. She had manipulated. She had lied. And when she was discovered, she simply left and found another victim. Mark was just another victim, and I had been the obstacle she needed to remove. Hearing that gave me a mix of emotions. On one hand, it confirmed that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts were correct. But on the other hand, it meant my son had been manipulated, deceived, used, and that hurt in a different way, because it meant that maybe he was a victim too, but a victim who chose not to see the truth. I tried to contact him once. After learning all this, I sent him a message. Simple, direct. Mark, I need you to know something important about Chloe. Please call me. I waited. 1 day, 2 days, a week. He never responded. And that's when I understood that he had already made his decision, that he had chosen to believe her, that he had chosen to see me as the villain, and that there was nothing I could do to change that. The truth didn't matter. The facts didn't matter, because love is blind. And sometimes love makes us choose the wrong people and defend the indefensible. Mark had chosen his path, and I had to accept it, even if it tore me apart inside. The months passed. Winter arrived, and with it came a strange peace, a peace I hadn't felt in years. I woke up without anxiety, without fear of finding someone in my space, without fear that something else in my life would be taken without my permission. My apartment smelled different now. It smelled like coffee in the mornings, soup in the afternoons. Clean. Mine. I started doing things I had stopped doing. I planted flowers on my balcony. I bought new cushions for the sofa. I painted one wall of my room a soft peach color that I had always liked. Small changes, small ways of reclaiming my space, my life, my identity. Evelyn introduced me to a group of women from the building. We met on Thursdays. We played cards. We drank tea. We talked. And I realized that many of them had similar stories. Children who didn't call, complicated families, disappointments. But they also had laughter. They had friendship. They had life. And they taught me something important. That family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is in who chooses to stay, who chooses to see you, who chooses to care for you. And these women had become my family, my support network, my refuge. One night, while watching television, I saw a news story. An elderly woman had been scammed by her own daughter. They had taken her house, her savings, everything, and they had left her on the street. The woman cried in the interview. She said she never thought her daughter would do that to her, that she trusted, that she loved, and that she lost everything. And as I watched her cry, I realized something. I could have been her. If I hadn't acted. If I hadn't changed those locks. If I had signed that power of attorney, I would be on the street right now. Homeless. With nothing. And Mark and Chloe would be living in my apartment. Enjoying what I built. Without remorse. Without guilt. And that realization removed the last trace of guilt that remained. Because I understood that I didn't just save my apartment, I saved my life. 6 months after changing the locks, my life had found a new rhythm. I woke up early. I did light exercise, just stretches and walks in the park near my house. Something I never had time to do when Chloe and Mark lived with me. I ate breakfast in peace. I read the newspaper. Small things, simple things, but they filled me in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I worked my shifts. I came home, and my house welcomed me with silence. A silence that no longer scared me, a silence that had become my best companion. Because in that silence, I could hear myself. I could think. I could heal. Evelyn organized a small dinner at her apartment. She invited the women from the Thursday group. And me. It was beautiful. Homemade food. Laughter. Stories. And at one point in the evening, Evelyn raised her glass and said, "I want to toast to Grace, for her courage, for teaching us that it's never too late to defend ourselves, for reminding us that self-love is not selfishness, it's survival." Everyone toasted, and I cried, but this time, not from sadness, from gratitude. Because these women saw me, they valued me, they respected me, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt part of something, of a community, of a chosen family, and that healed wounds I didn't even know I had. One afternoon, while cleaning an office downtown, I received a call from an unknown number. I usually didn't answer unknown numbers. But something made me respond. It was a woman's voice. Young. Nervous. "Mrs. Grace, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Sarah. I'm a friend of Mark's. I need to talk to you. It's urgent." My heart stopped. I asked her what was wrong. She hesitated, and then said, "It's about Chloe. You need to know the truth. Can we meet?" I agreed. We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop near my house. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning. What truth? What had happened? Was Mark okay? Unanswered questions kept me awake until dawn. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I ordered a tea. I sat at a table in the back. And I waited. Sarah arrived on time. She was a woman in her 30s. Elegant. With sad eyes. She sat across from me, ordered a coffee, and then she started talking. She told me she knew Mark from work, that they had been friends for years, that she had known Chloe from the beginning, and that she had never liked her, that she always saw something false in her, something calculating. But she never said anything because it wasn't her place. She told me that after Mark and Chloe left my apartment, things had gotten worse, that they had rented a small place, that Mark was working double to pay the rent, that Chloe continued with her business, but spent everything on clothes and luxuries, that they fought constantly. Sarah looked me in the eyes and said, "Mrs. Grace, Chloe cheated on Mark several times. And when he found out, she convinced him it was his fault, that he didn't pay attention to her, that he worked too much. Mark forgave her, because he's trapped, because she manipulates him. Just like she manipulated you." I felt a deep pain in my chest. For my son, for what he was going through. But Sarah wasn't finished. She continued. "And 2 weeks ago, Mark called me crying. He told me Chloe left, that she left him, that she took everything of value he had, his savings, his computer, his expensive clothes, everything, and she disappeared. Mark is destroyed, he's alone, and he's starting to realize everything. How she used him, how she used both of you." I asked her why she was telling me this. She sighed. "Because Mark isn't going to call you. He has too much pride, too much shame, but he needs his mother. He's broken, and I know you're hurt too, but I thought you should know. That you should have the choice to decide what to do with this information." I thanked her. I told her I needed time to process it. She nodded. She gave me her number. And she left. I stayed sitting in that coffee shop for another hour, with my cold tea, looking out the window, processing, feeling, trying to understand what to do with all this. Part of me wanted to run and find Mark, hug him, tell him everything would be okay. But another part of me, the part that was still healing, told me to wait, that this was not my responsibility, that Mark needed to learn this lesson alone. That night I spoke with Evelyn. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. And when I finished, she told me something I'll never forget. Grace, the fact that Chloe left him doesn't erase what Mark did to you. It doesn't erase the screaming. It doesn't erase his lawyer's letter. It doesn't erase that he chose to believe her over you. You can have compassion for his pain, but you don't have to rescue him. He is an adult. And the consequences of his choices are his, not yours. She was right. And even though it hurt, even though my mother's heart wanted to run and save him, my head knew I couldn't, that I shouldn't. Because if I did, I would be teaching him that he can treat me badly and I will always be there. And that was not the lesson I wanted to give him. 2 weeks passed. And then I received a message. From Mark. It was the first time he had written to me in months. The message said, "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you, but I need to talk to you. Please." My first instinct was to respond immediately, but I stopped myself. I breathed. And I called Mr. Harrison. I told him the situation. I asked him what I should do. He told me, "Mrs. Grace, you can talk to him if you want, but set boundaries. Meet in a public place, not at your apartment, and don't promise anything. Just listen. See if there is real remorse or just need." I followed his advice. I responded to Mark. I told him we could meet at a coffee shop. The next day, at 3 in the afternoon, he accepted. I arrived at the coffee shop nervous. I hadn't seen Mark in 6 months. I didn't know how I was going to react, how I was going to feel. I sat down and waited. He arrived 10 minutes late, and when I saw him, I lost my breath. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked tired, broken. He sat across from me. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just looked at me. And then I saw something in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Guilt, remorse, pain. He started to speak, his voice breaking. "Mom, I don't even know where to begin. I've been an idiot, a horrible son. I treated you badly. I accused you of terrible things. And all because I was blind. Because I didn't want to see the truth about Chloe." He kept talking. He told me everything. How Chloe had manipulated him. How she had convinced him that I was the problem. How she had lied to him about so many things. How she had used him. And how she had finally left him with nothing. He cried. My adult son cried in front of me like he did when he was a child, and my heart broke. But I didn't move. I didn't hug him. I didn't console him, because I needed to hear more. I needed to know if he really understood what he had done to me, or if he was just looking for comfort because Chloe had left him. I asked him directly, "Mark, if Chloe hadn't left you, would you be here right now? Would you have realized anything?" He fell silent. He thought. And then with brutal honesty, he said, "Probably not." And that kills me inside. Because it means I needed to lose everything to realize what I had, to realize what I did to you. That honesty hurt me, but it also gave me hope, because it meant he was being real. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He was truly facing his mistakes. I asked him what he expected from me, what he wanted. He took a deep breath and said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to take me back. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry, that you were right about everything, that I should have listened to you, that I should have defended you, and that losing your trust is the highest price I've ever paid in my life. Higher than losing Chloe, higher than losing the money. Losing you was the worst, and it was my fault." His words reached me deep down, because they were the words I had needed to hear. Not excuses, not justifications, just responsibility, just truth. I told him I appreciated his honesty, that I appreciated his apology, but that I couldn't just forget everything that happened, that I needed time, that I needed to see actions, not just words, that I needed to rebuild the trust that was broken, and that it wouldn't happen overnight. He nodded. He told me he understood, that he wouldn't ask for more than I was willing to give, that he would respect my timeline, that if one day I could forgive him, it would be a gift he didn't deserve. We sat in silence for a moment, and then I asked him, "Are you okay? Do you have a place to live?" He nodded. He told me he was renting a small room, that he was working hard to recover, that he was in therapy, that he was trying to understand how he had gotten so far, how he had lost so much of himself. We said goodbye at the coffee shop. There was no hug, no promises, just a silent understanding that this was just the beginning of something new, or maybe the definitive end. I didn't know yet, and it was okay not to know. I went home with mixed feelings, relief at having heard a real apology, sadness for all that had been lost, and caution, a lot of caution. Because words are easy, actions are what count, and I needed to see if Mark had really changed, or if he was just hurt and vulnerable. Time would tell, and I had all the time in the world, because now my time was mine. My life was mine, and no one would take it from me again. The weeks passed. Mark would send me messages from time to time, never asking for anything, just sharing how he was, that he had finished a project at work, that he had gone to the park we used to visit when he was a kid, that he was reading a book I had recommended to him years ago. Small messages, small windows into his life. I would respond, briefly, kindly but with distance. Because I was still protecting my peace, I was still healing, and I wasn't going to rush that process for anyone, not even for my own son. Evelyn asked me once if I was going to forgive him. I told her I didn't know. That forgiveness wasn't a switch I could turn on and off, that it was a process, long, painful, complicated, and that maybe it would never fully arrive, and that was okay, that I could live with that uncertainty. 3 months after our meeting at the coffee shop, Mark asked to see me again. This time, he had something to show me. I agreed. We met at the same place. He arrived with a box. A cardboard box full of things. He put it on the table, and he started taking out objects. My vase. The one Chloe had stored in the closet. Family photos that had disappeared. My old sheets. The blanket my husband gave me. Things I thought I had lost forever. I asked him how he had them. He explained that when Chloe left, she had left several boxes behind. Boxes with things she had taken from my apartment without my permission. Things she planned to sell or throw away. Mark had saved them. He had cleaned them. He had protected them. And now he was returning them to me. "It's not enough to make up for everything," he said, "but I wanted you to have back what was always yours." I took the vase in my hands. I wiped it with my sleeve. And the tears began to fall. Because it wasn't just a vase. It was a piece of my husband, a piece of my history, a piece of me that I thought I had lost. I looked at Mark, and for the first time in months, I saw my son. Not the man who had screamed at me, not the man who had chosen Chloe over me, but the boy I raised, the boy who loved me, the boy who was still in there somewhere, under all the pain and mistakes. I thanked him, my voice breaking, and for the first time since changing the locks, I felt that maybe there was hope. Maybe not all was lost. Maybe we could rebuild something, different from what we had before, stronger, more honest, more real. Mark started visiting me once a month, always in public places, never at my apartment. I still wasn't ready for that, and he respected it. We talked about simple things. Work, the weather, movies. We never forced deep conversations. We just let the relationship rebuild itself naturally, slowly, like a plant that had been ripped out by the roots and was now trying to grow again. It was fragile, it was delicate, but it was real, and that was enough for now. Evelyn told me she was proud of me, that I was handling the situation with wisdom, that I wasn't giving in too quickly, but I wasn't closing the door completely either, that I was finding a balance. And she was right. I was learning something new, That a mother's love doesn't mean sacrificing everything. It means setting healthy boundaries. It means teaching respect. It means taking care of myself so I can care for others. 1 year after changing the locks, something extraordinary happened. Mark invited me to dinner, to a nice restaurant. I arrived nervous. I didn't know what to expect. He was already seated when I arrived. He looked different, better, healthier, more at peace. We sat down. We ordered food. And then he took something out of his pocket. It was a key, a simple key. He handed it to me. I asked him what it was. He smiled sadly and said, "It's the key to my new apartment, a place I paid for myself, with my job, without anyone's help. I want you to have it, not because I expect you to come, but because I want you to know that there's always a place for you in my life. When you're ready, if you're ever ready." I took the key. I looked at it, and I felt something strange. Pride. Pride in my son. In his growth. In his effort. In his independence. I told him I was proud of him, that I could see how much he had changed, how much he had worked on himself. And then I did something I hadn't done in a year. I hugged him. It was a short hug, timid, but real. And when we pulled apart, I saw tears in his eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. "Thank you for teaching me the hardest, but most important, lesson of my life." I told him that children don't come with an instruction manual, that we had both made mistakes, that we had both learned, and that this wasn't a perfect happy ending. It was simply a new beginning, a more honest one, a healthier one where we both knew our boundaries and respected them. In the following months, our relationship continued to improve. Slowly but steadily, Mark invited me to his apartment. I went. It was small but clean, organized. His. There was no trace of Chloe, no trace of the past. Just a man building his life from scratch. He cooked for me. A simple meal, pasta with tomato sauce. The same kind I used to make him when he was a child. And as we ate, we talked about things we had never talked about his fears, about his regrets, about how Chloe had filled a void he didn't even know he had, and about how losing me almost destroyed him. I told him about my process, about the fear I felt, about the loneliness after changing the locks, about the nights spent crying, wondering if I had done the right thing, about Evelyn and the women in the building who became my family. Mark asked me if he could ever come back to my apartment. I told him I didn't know, that this space was still my sanctuary, my refuge, and that I needed to keep it that way for now. He understood. He didn't push. He just said that when I was ready, he would be there, and that in the meantime he would keep showing me with actions that he had changed, that he was trustworthy again, that he deserved a second chance, not with words, with deeds. That night when I returned home, I sat in my living room, in my old armchair, looking at my apartment, the walls I had reclaimed, the space I had defended, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, complete peace, because I had won. I hadn't won a war against my son. I had won a war for myself, for my dignity, for my right to exist in my own space without fear. 2 years after changing the locks, my life was completely different. I still worked, but fewer hours. I had saved enough to reduce my shifts. I spent more time with Evelyn and the women from the building. I had adopted a cat, an old cat that nobody wanted from the shelter. His name was Rusty, and he sat with me every night on the sofa. Mark and I saw each other every 2 weeks, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at his apartment. And finally, one day, I invited him to mine. It was strange having him back there, but this time it was different. This time he was my guest. Not someone who lived there, not someone who made decisions about my space. Just a guest, who respected my rules, who valued being there, who understood the privilege it was to walk through that door. We drank coffee. We talked. He looked at the photos on the wall, the same photos Chloe had taken down and that were now back. He asked me about the cat. I told him how I had found him, and at one point in the afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, I realized something. I had forgiven. Not completely, Maybe never completely, but enough. Enough to have a relationship, enough to have peace, enough to move forward. Forgiveness hadn't been a moment. It had been 2 years of small steps, of respected boundaries, of actions that demonstrated change. And now I could finally breathe in the same room as my son without feeling resentment. When Mark left that afternoon, I stood in front of my door. The door with the new locks. The locks that had changed everything. And I thought about the woman I was 2 years ago. Scared, invaded, lost in her own home. And I compared her to the woman I was now. Strong, independent, the owner of her life. And I smiled. Because sometimes, protecting your peace isn't selfishness, it's survival. And changing the locks was just the beginning of taking my life back. I learned that love doesn't mean putting up with everything. That saying no is an act of self-love. That boundaries don't destroy relationships. Boundaries protect the relationships that deserve to exist. And that sometimes the greatest lesson you can give your children isn't your sacrifice. It's your dignity. That night, as I was making dinner, Rusty rubbed against my legs. Evelyn knocked on my door to invite me to play cards. And my phone buzzed with a message from Mark that said, "Thank you for today, Mom. I love you." And I realized that this was happiness. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, honest, mine. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and I whispered to myself, sometimes, to get your peace back, it's not the lock that needs to change. It's the people you let in.